Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Breckland Planning. It's the Rude show today, so we're not in our committee suite. My name's Councillor Nigel Wilkin. I'm the chairman of the Planning Committee and here today for this presentation. Could I first of all go through a general safety with regards fire evacuation at any time? There are no planned evacuations today of this building, so if we hear a fire alarm, we will treat it as genuine. I would ask if you could vacate by the door there where the security officer is stopping you at the moment, but he's just moved, and turn immediately left to the back of the building. There's an extensive area there where we would congregate and take it from there. There's also another fire door, which is the one that you came in. Again, we would ask you to then make your way to the back of the building rather than to the front. Thank you. So we're going to start the meeting for today. Julie, apologies and substitutions, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I have apologies from Councillor Atterwill, Councillor Annie Blackburn, Councillor Gilbert and Councillor Michael Westman. And substitutes in attendance are Councillor Peter Bate, Councillor Kendra Cogman, Councillor Robin Hunter-Clark and Councillor David Wickerson.
Thank you very much, and thank you to those members who have come in as substitutions today. Item 2, declarations of interest and representations received. I know we have had quite a few different ones and they have all been covered off within the agenda as noted. Item 3, Chairman's announcements. I've got nothing to announce today. So item 5, we go on to urgent business. Do we have any items? No, thank you. So we'll take our main agenda item, item 5, which is the Abbey Estate application 3PL 2024-0394 in outline format. Rebecca, could I ask you to take the presentation, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So the application in front of you today is a proposal for outline planning permission for the demolition and phased development of residential units up to 500, including special care units and HMOs, and up to 1,600 square metres of flexible floor space for Class E use, Class F, Class 2, F2, F1 and F2, Surrey Generous, and external alterations to existing properties together with associated highway, engineering and landscape works and all detailed matters except for access points at the boundary to be reserved for future determination. Members, for your information, this is an outline planning application with all matters reserved apart from access. This means matters of layout, scale, appearance and landscape cannot be considered at this stage. This would include the design of dwellings, layout and scale of buildings and spaces, loss of specific buildings, car parking, open space, etc., with only the principle of development which can be considered at this stage. The principle merely relates to the demolition of properties and garages, not exactly which ones, and the construction of up to a maximum of 500 new dwellings, along with new commercial development as listed in the description of development. To demonstrate the proposal could be acceptable in principle, the applicants have submitted a number of illustrative plans. However, the details shown on these plans are considered to be matters of layout, scale, appearance and landscape, and therefore would be considered with the relevant reserved matters applications at a later stage. And plans have been provided for illustrative purposes only. Members will note there was a supplementary report accompanying the main report, which is available on our website to read. This shows the location plan. The applicant is the Flagship Group, is a registered housing association that owns 670 of the 1,087 existing dwellings on the Abbey Estate, equating to approximately 66%. The site has a total area of 37 hectares, with the existing estate being primarily residential in character, with ancillary neighbourhood centre and educational institutions. The site lies in the Thetford settlement boundary, as shown in pink on the plan in front of you, members, and within the Thetford conservation area lies to the east, and that's the darker pink line with listed buildings within, and they're shown outlined with the darker pink lines just to the east there, members. A small number of TPO trees lie on the eastern boundary of the site, marked with green circles on the slide. and the A11 lies outside the site to the west, the Little Ouse River lies outside the site to the south, and the railway line out to the north. With regards to the principle of development, the site lies within the Thetford settlement boundary, which is a key settlement in the sustainable settlement hierarchy where new development is supported. This is supported by policies Gen 03 and HO2 of the Breckland Local Plan and policy TH37 of the Thetford Area Action Plan, a SAVE policy, identifies the Abbey as being suitable for regeneration, as does the Breckland Landscape and Settlement Character Assessment, SPD. Furthermore, the council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, and given the site's sustainable location, the effective use of land, and the community benefits proposed, this further outweighs the principle of development in this location. Here is an aerial site plan showing the layout of the current estate, primarily spurs off the primary Canterbury Way, which is a circular route around the centre. This is the existing site plan that shows the existing residential properties, garages, and other commercial and community uses, as shown with the coloured plan on the coloured key on the side. So members, the only detailed matters for consideration today are the access points. These are the access points to the north and to the south of Canterbury Way, and those are marked with red arrows on the screen in front of you. It is proposed that Canterbury Way will remain the primary access to and vehicular connection through the site. A transport assessment has been submitted in support of the application. The site is situated in a sustainable location, being accessible via bus and cycling with good transport links within the local area and further afield. The transport assessment sets out the aspirations to develop these key linkages further via a range of improvements, including the redevelopment of Potters Park, a new neighbourhood centre, and additional transport infrastructure such as improved bus stops. The Highways Authority have been consulted and has assessed that the proposed access arrangements at the site boundaries are acceptable. The submitted transport assessment concludes that the model junctions in the vicinity of the site will operate within acceptable capacity limits. It must also be considered that the modelling has not accounted for the modal shifts set out within the submitted framework travel plan, which is conditioned. The Highways Authority has raised no objections to the principle of the proposed estate regeneration, subject to appropriate levels of parking, bus, road, footway and cycle infrastructure being provided as part of the Reserve Matters applications. A number of conditions have been applied to ensure these measures are complied with. On this basis, the proposed development is not considered to result in significant adverse impacts on highway safety or the operation of the surrounding highway network, nor would there be an unacceptable impact on highway safety, or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network following mitigation would be severe in accordance with paragraph 116 in the MPPF. As such, it's considered that development complies with relevant local plan policies as well as the Thetford Area Action Plan and the MPPF. With the application, an illustrative master plan has been submitted which presents an option for developing the estate, which consists of the demolition of 551 residential units and the construction of 859 replacement dwellings, resulting in a total of 1,395 dwellings. Should the application be approved, the final detailed design of the proposed development will come forward as part of a Reserve Matters application, with a maximum of 1,587 dwellings based on a density of 43 dwellings per hectare. The detailed design is not to be considered at this stage. The illustrative master plan identifies the various uses, their relationship to each other, and the indicative street hierarchy. Within the development, it must be noted that the detailed layout will be subject to a Reserve Matters and is not fixed. The illustrative master plan includes the removal of existing homes where required to facilitate the proposed new development, the intention being to integrate the new with the existing, including retrofitting of the existing, and to create a safe, sustainable environment. The illustrative master plan also seeks to retain the woodland setting of the Abbey with new opportunities to connect with nature promoted. The principles of this include transformation of garage sites and the induction of a new lane, the neighbourhood centre including park and new community facilities and shops, improvements to existing streets and green spaces, enhancements to land adjacent to riverside, Potter's Path, a safe east-west route from the neighbourhood heart to the park and towards the footpath network which connects to the town centre. The submitted illustrative plans depict one way that both formal and informal public open space can be provided at the application site, including a new neighbourhood park at the centre of the estate, providing sports and recreation facilities, play pit space, SUDS features, biodiversity enhancements, a public green space along the railway edge that will provide opportunities for recreation, improved communal amenity spaces, including opportunities for food growing, junior play and informal recreation, an informal green space linking the railway green and the Little Ouse River and Abbey Meadows, and connectivity and integration with open space improvements within the local area. Also, various informal public amenity spacing providing localised recreation and improved ecology and biodiversity will be located throughout the site. An indicative phasing plan has been submitted in which the development will be phased over a period of 20 years. Precise construction and phasing details are unknown, and a condition has been proposed to ensure details of the phasing are agreed within the first Reserve Matters application. The indicative phasing plan shows phases 1A and 1B will be delivered in the northeastern corner of the site. The phasing will progress from north to south across the site, with the final phase being in the southwestern corner of the site. The neighbourhood centre and park will come forward during phase 5, illustratively. The application proposes demolition of existing buildings on the Abbey to facilitate regeneration. The demolished buildings would include residential, retail and community buildings, along with garages and substations and pumping stations. Whilst the details of which buildings would be demolished will be determined via future Reserve Matters applications, an illustrative demolition plan has been submitted to demonstrate one way in which the site could be developed. This shows that it could potentially be necessary to demolish 551 dwellings and 726 garages to deliver a residential uplift of 500 dwellings across the Abbey. In terms of the impacts of long-term construction upon public health, it is accepted that there will be impacts from demolition. However, these will be managed through detailed phasing and construction and demolition management plans required by appropriately worded conditions. It must be considered that demolition would fall within the permitted development rights for demolition, and the permitted development rights in this instance are subject to the need to obtain prior approval, but only in terms of means of demolition and site clearance. Parking provision is also illustrative at this stage and would be a matter for future Reserve Matters applications. A parking ratio of 1.55 spaces per dwelling has been indicatively proposed. There are 1,087 existing dwellings in the Abbey estate. The transport assessment states that there are up to 1,582 available legal parking spaces located both on and off street, and this includes marked bays, driveways, lay-bys, and unrestricted on-street parking. The transport statement assesses that the existing provision of parking on the site is 1.46 spaces per dwelling, with demand being only 0.8 spaces per dwelling. A total of 2,251 spaces are indicatively proposed, with range of parking types depicted on the illustrative plans. These include shared courtyard parking, shared parking courts, on-street parallel and perpendicular parking bays, on-plot driveway parking, podium parking, and parking barns. However, none of these are approved at this stage. Regarding non-residential uses, disabled and cycle parking, it is stated the provisions would comply with the Norfolk County Council parking standard in force at the time of the relevant Reserve Matters applications. No off-site highways works are proposed as part of this proposal. However, conditions are proposed to review this at Reserve Matters stage. With regards to housing mix, the illustrative master plan depicts dwellings ranging in size from 1 to 5 bedrooms. The submission also proposes provision of specialist units in the form of residential institutions at C2 use and houses in multiple occupation. 25% of affordable housing will be provided on new housing, and it is stated that the tenure will comprise of a mix of affordable rent, shared ownership and market dwellings. Based on the illustrative master plan and an uplift of 500 homes, this will result in 125 additional affordable homes within the estate. This can be further considered with the relevant reserve matters applications and through the discharge of obligations in the Section 106. The illustrative plans depict a regenerated neighbourhood centre with proposed new non-residential uses located along Exeter Way at the ground floor level with residential above. The illustrative plans also propose up to 1,600 square metres of flexible floor space. The illustrative plans also propose limited community uses at first floor level, and a condition has been added to limit the amount of town centre uses within the neighbourhood centre at 1,000 square metres, as supported by the NPPF and the local plan, so as not to compete with the town centre's vitality and viability. Policies COM04 of the local plan and TH35 of the town centre area action plan support the enhancement of community facilities. The application is also supported by a site-wide energy and overheating strategy, which considers heat supply options, including air and ground source heat pumps and direct electric heating. It is also considered that the illustrative scheme presents a solution which seeks to respect the existing character of the Abbey and the surrounding area, whilst looking to modernise the estate in terms of character, appearance, safety and sustainability, and making more effective use of land. As such, it's considered that the scheme complies with the Breckland Local Plan, Breckland Design Guide, the NPPF, and the National Design Guide. The illustrative building heights parameter plan depicts a range of building heights from 1 to 6 stories, with the majority in the range of 2 to 3 stories. The taller buildings are depicted towards the centre of the site in the vicinity of the neighbourhood centre and adjacent to the railway line along the northern site boundary. A view assessment carried out by the application has identified these are the least sensitive locations for relatively taller buildings by virtue of screening provided by existing development and mature trees. It is also stated in the supporting information that a design aim is to use the varying building heights to create focal points and gateways within the development. However, sufficient detail and justification for any relatively taller buildings must come forward as part of any future reserve matters applications. As this is an outline application, details regarding the location, scale, and design of each dwelling would not be considered until reserve matter stage. The submitted building heights and building extents illustrative parameter plans and illustrative master plans seek to demonstrate that the layout of the development can be designed so as not to result in impacts on amenity of existing and future residents. A daylight sunlight assessment has been submitted as part of the application, concluding that the illustrative scheme would not result in an unacceptable loss of daylight or sunlight to existing windows, be overbearing or overdominant. This member shows the, sorry, this is a bit light. So this is the existing site sections of the site, and then the proposed site sections of the site, but again, these are illustrative only. The submission also outlines an emphasis on making Abbey more user-friendly and accessible with increased natural surveillance in an attempt to eradicate noted antisocial behaviours. These aspirations will likely necessitate the removal of a significant number of existing garages and parts of existing residential gardens. The applicant has stated that the garage compensation will be the garage loss will be compensated by a replacement option, and where gardens are sought, these will be provided. This slide shows the existing site layout and the existing open space and how that's laid out within the estate as existing. And then this is the illustrative master plan. There is approximately 12 hectares of formal open space within the site, and including only 2 playgrounds, and informal open space across the Abbey. Much of the existing green space is allocated between backs of dwellings and is underused, consisting of monotonous lawns devoid of seating or lighting. Front gardens are minimal, with the proliferation of small grassed areas being used for informal parking, along with lots of small strips of green verges which serve little purpose. The submission sets out that one of the key aspirations of the proposal is the provision of an enhanced green infrastructure. A green infrastructure addendum was submitted, which provides additional green infrastructure whilst demonstrating how an adequate provision of suitable alternative natural green space can be integrated into the estate to mitigate against the potential adverse implications of in-combination recreational impacts. The submission outlines that in order to provide an uplift of 500 residential units, there would need to be a reduction in open space, resulting in a deficit of 0.72 hectares when using the open space assessment and 3.5 hectares when using the existing open space plan. Therefore, in order to conform with policy EMV01 of the local plan, there would need to be a qualitative improvement in provision, which is the intention. The remaining open space, as per the open space assessment, would be 11.28 hectares. In terms of a qualitative open space improvement, it is noted that the illustrative master plan and wider submission does promote the following: enhanced areas for play across the estate in the form of laps, leaps and neeps. The intention is that all residents will have play facilities close to their homes. A marked increase in the number of children's play areas from 2 to 17 on the illustrative master plan. Designing the estate to improve the informal green space provision and opportunities for informal play. Provision of a new neighbourhood park in the centre of the Abbey to provide a focal point for recreation and community within the estate. Whilst the precise quantum of open space provision and design will be determined via reserve matters applications, there would be a quantitative reduction in open space across the site, and qualitative improvements to the open space across the site will result in biodiversity benefits, and there will also be a 10% increase in biodiversity net gain. Further qualitative improvements would arise in terms of the provision of a range of new play and sports and recreational spaces, and there will be a requirement to provide detailed open space recreational provision at reserve matters stage. It is proposed that the existing flagship houses that are not set to be demolished are improved through external alterations and retrofitting as shown on the slides, such as cladding, new insulation and replacement fenestration. The majority of the site lies in flood zone 1 with a low probability of flooding, with an area of flood zone 2 with a medium probability of flooding, and 3 located in the southern part of the site adjacent to the River Ouse. This is shown on the slide on the left-hand side. In addition, there are 2 significant surface water flow paths present on the site, shown on the surface water flood risk map on the right-hand side of the slide. A flood risk and drainage report has been submitted in support of the application, and this sets out that the proposal has been designed to incorporate SUDs to reduce the volume of surface water being discharged to the public sewer and provide an overall benefit to the site in terms of water quality. It is stated the preferred option for surface water drainage is discharge via infiltration using private soakaways, swales, rain gardens, infiltration basins and permeable paving. The LLFA has raised no objection to the proposal, subject to the inclusion of appropriately worded condition. Anglian Water has raised concerns as set out in the supplementary report, but these matters can be suitably addressed by planning conditions as proposed. The Environment Agency has raised no objections, strongly recommending that the mitigation measures proposed in the submitted FRA are adhered to. In particular, the finished floor levels will be set 300 mil above predicted flood levels, and this is in a recommended condition. The sequential test is required where any part of the proposed development falls within an area of flood risk. The application is an outline planning application where the exact development perimeters have not been set. The site lies within an area where parts of the red line boundary intersect with flood zones 2 and flood zones 3, although all the proposed built development is located within flood zone 1. In addition, there are 2 significant surface water flow paths present on the site. And in accordance with the MPPF and PPG, the sequential test must be applied where any part of the site is at risk from any form of flooding, including surface water. However, where a site-specific flood risk assessment demonstrates that no built development, access or escape routes, land, rising or other vulnerable elements will be located on land at risk of flooding now or in the future, the sequential test may be deemed unnecessary. In this case, the submitted flood risk assessment confirms that all built development is confined to flood zone 1. This will be secured via an appropriately worded planning condition. In the context of surface water flooding, the mitigation measures would ensure that occupiers and users would remain safe for the lifetime of development. And therefore, on this basis, the sequential test is not required. Accordingly, it is recommended that a suitable drainage strategy can be delivered for the proposal in accordance with the principles set out within the latest policy guidance. And a condition is recommended in this regard. The proposal is therefore considered in accordance with the Breckland Local Plan and Thetford Area Action Plan. With regards to trees, the Abbey is currently characterised by 484 individual trees, 69 groups of trees, 3 hedges and 8 woodlands. The application is supported by an arboricultural impact assessment, and it is noted that in order to facilitate the proposed uplift in dwellings depicted on the illustrative master plan, the removal of trees, hedgerows and partial removal of woodland is required. However, indicatively, 572 new trees will be planted on site and a further 300 new trees off site. The council's tree and countryside officer has been consulted and initially objected to the loss of the Category A woodland. The applicant subsequently agreed to retain the Category A woodland, and the objection was removed. Therefore, whilst it is acknowledged that there will be a loss of a Category B woodland, indicatively, and trees, satisfactory long-term mitigation is proposed, and the illustrative plans have demonstrated that it is possible to provide a suitably improved overall approach to design and landscaping in accordance with policy ENV06 of the local plan. Whilst layout and landscaping will be subject of reserved matters submissions, it is considered that a major characteristic of the development will be defined by green corridors and spaces, as well as the benefits it will bring to residents and biodiversity. Conditions will ensure the retention of existing trees and hedges not listed to removal, and also secure appropriate protection measures during construction and demolition. With regards to air quality, a rapid health impact assessment has been submitted in support of the application. Mitigation measures are proposed within the report to reduce the nuisance and human health impacts. The council's air quality officer has reviewed the submission and accepts the findings of the report. However, they raise concerns regarding the impact of dust on existing residents from demolition over a prolonged period of time. The required detail can be provided and assessed as part of condition, demolition and construction management plan. And Norfolk County Council Public Health has agreed with the comments of the council's air quality officer, and a contribution will be sought to monitor NOx emissions arising from additional construction traffic. The Air Quality Officer and Norfolk County Council Public Health raised no objections on this basis. An odour impact assessment will be required in respect of any hot food takeaway premises, and to assess impact of the sewage works to the west of the site. This will be secured via conditions. Regarding the food environment, the Public Health Officer at County Council supports conditions to restrict additional unhealthy food outlets and promote access to healthy options, including allotments and foraging spaces. A condition is proposed on this basis to limit new hot food takeaways to 1, and allotments are proposed in green spaces. With regards to noise from demolition and construction over a long period and the proximity of new dwellings adjacent to the railway line, A11 and sewage works are key considerations. Baseline sound and vibration surveys undertaken as part of the assessment concluded that acceptable levels of internal noise would be achieved via the utilisation of thermal double glazing and non-acoustic trickle vents throughout the development. The report also concludes that noise levels at outdoor amenity areas will be within recommended guidelines. A negligible change in traffic noise is also reported as a result of the development, and the submitted information recommends a construction phasing strategy to mitigate identified noise impacts associated with construction. The council's environmental health officer has assessed the proposals and raised no objections in this regard. However, they did raise some concerns in respect of noise levels that may occur within some gardens and the impact this will have on amenity. As such, a condition for the submission of phase-specific noise assessments in support of the future reserved matters applications and a construction environmental management plan to alleviate environmental concerns are proposed. With regards to contamination, a ground investigation study was undertaken by the applicant. The council's contamination officer has reviewed the submission and raised no objections subject to conditions. With regards to HSE, as shown on the plan in front of you, the HSE initially raised objections to the proposals due to the illustrative master plan depicting new dwellings within the inner HSE consultation zone of a major hazardous site in the northeastern corner of the site, the railway edge. The applicant has subsequently amended the illustrative plan so that no new dwellings will be proposed within the inner blast zone, and the HSE are satisfied in this regard, and a condition has been proposed. Exolium apparatus in the form of underground fuel pipeline runs through the centre of the site. The illustrative plan have utilised this restriction as an opportunity to create a new linear connection from the railway edge to the riverside to include amenities such as play areas, food growing opportunities, and public open space. On this basis, Exolium do not object, and a condition has been included. The application site also lies within close proximity to a medium and low pressure Cadent assets. Cadent has no objection to the proposal, subject to a condition to ensure nothing will be built on top of the mains easement. With regards to heritage, there are no designated heritage assets located within the application site boundary, and the Abbey is not within the Thetford Conservation Area. The heritage assessment concludes that development would have a negligible effect on the character and setting of nearby designated and non-designated heritage assets, and Historic England and the Council's Historic Buildings Officer have been consulted, both agreeing that the proposals are unlikely to harm nearby designated heritage assets. That said, any less than substantial harm to heritage would be outweighed by public benefit in terms of provision of housing, including affordable and enhanced community provision. The proposal therefore complies with the requirements of the NPPF, the Local Plan, and the Planning Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act. A desktop archaeology report has been submitted in support of the application. The report assesses that there's high potential for archaeological remains on the site. An archaeological evaluation by trial trenching was subsequently undertaken. Based on this, Norfolk County Council Historic Environment Service were consulted and advised that no further archaeological mitigation is required. With regards to ecology, a preliminary ecological appraisal and surveys have been undertaken. This study recommends that trees should be retained and protected where possible. The submitted illustrative master plan demonstrates that whilst a significant number of trees would need to be removed to facilitate the residential uplift, an extensive planting scheme would mitigate this loss. As landscape and layout of reserve matters, a comprehensive landscaping scheme can be secured via condition. With regards to bats, the PEA identified some trees with evidence of bat activity, and it assessed it was likely other trees across the site could support roosting bats, along with buildings across the site. The preliminary roost assessment and bat activity survey did not identify any roosting bats, but stated that bat calls were frequently detected early enough to suggest the site is likely to contain a number of bat roost sites with low numbers of common species. As such, the Council's ecologist has advised that a mitigation and compensation strategy for bats will need to be submitted prior to the commencement of each phase and secured by condition. Additionally, should bats roosting be identified anywhere on the site, a Natural England licence must be obtained. With regards to birds, reptiles and hedgehogs, our ecologist is satisfied these matters can be dealt with via conditions. And the PEA makes general recommendations for ecological enhancements at detailed design stage, including sustainable urban drainage systems, biodiverse green roofs, bird nesting and bat roosting opportunities, wildlife-friendly fencing and planting. These details will come forward at reserve matter stage. With regards to statutory designated sites, there are statutory designated sites approximately 200 to 300 metres west of the site, with the Breckland SPA, SAC, and Breckland Forest Triple SI, and Thetford Golf Course and Marsh Triple SI. The site is located within 400 metres of the Breckland SPA. Contributions under the Norfolk RAMS payments will be secured to address the recreational pressures on this site via the Section 106 agreement, and the applicant has submitted a shadow HRA assessment, which will consider the likely effects on statutory designated sites within the vicinity of the Abbey. An appropriate assessment has been carried out by the local planning authority as competent authority, and this appropriate assessment is with Natural England for comments. The ecologist, and apologies, and therefore that is a matter of delegation listed at the end of your report. The Council's ecologist and Natural England consider that the proposed mitigation measures will adequately overcome any adverse effect of the proposal on the Norfolk habitat site, subject to the RAMS mitigation measures being secured by legal agreement and the suitable alternative natural green space secured via condition. It's therefore been demonstrated that no significant harm will occur to protected and priority species or habitat, and no adverse impact at all would occur in the context of the Breckland SPA and SAC. With regards to non-statutory designated sites, the non-statutory designated Abbey Meadows County Wildlife Site is adjacent to the south of the Abbey. Norfolk Wildlife Trust, who are not a statutory consultee, have objected to the application based on what it sees as an uncertainty regarding impacts upon Abbey Meadows County Wildlife Site. In this regard, the submitted preliminary ecological appraisal does not anticipate any direct development impacts within the county wildlife site, and any potential impacts on the county wildlife site will be subject to full assessment when the detailed design comes forward as part of the future reserve matters applications. The council's ecologists have satisfied the impacts will be suitably mitigated for both statutory and non-statutory designated sites. So with the proposals, the applicants have submitted a number of illustrative character areas which will inform the future design of the estate. Whilst the detailed design of the proposed development is a reserve matter, the applicant has submitted a design and illustrative design code, the purpose of which is to set out the illustrative principles, rules and guidance to be adhered to at the detailed design stage. In the event of an approval, conditions would be imposed requiring compliance with the principles set out in the design and access statement and the submission and approval of a final design code which would build upon the principles of the illustrative document. The illustrative design code sets out a number of character areas. One of these character areas, Canterbury Way, is the transformation of the principal route through the estate to provide a safer route for pedestrians, vehicles and cyclists. Improvements to existing streets and green spaces, the public realm across the estate would be improved. New trees would be planted and better organised planting and improved lighting would transform existing streets. Another character area, the railway edge, is a new east-west green street which provides an east-west connection from St Albans Way to Gloucester Way to reduce the quantum of cul-de-sac streets. Existing homes which follow the existing street alignment should be replaced with homes backing onto the railway to allow space for the link road. Formal, taller buildings should create a prominent, strong edge to the Abbey along its northern boundary and a green setting including new and improved connections to the Thetford railway station. The garages would be transformed into the lane through the removal of garages and the introduction of new homes. The lane is a new pedestrian and cycle priority family street with homes that front onto it and play on the way and soft landscaping. The Forest Gateway, reflecting the woodland character of the Abbey with new homes and public space set within trees, promoting the northern Thetford loop through an improved public realm with space for both cyclists and pedestrians and access to the railway footbridge to the north of Gloucester Way. Furthermore, the existing neighbourhood centre would be enhanced with a new community centre located on a community square opposite the new park at the heart of the estate. There will be spaces for new shops and the relocation of existing businesses, as well as a cafe and new homes. Exeter Way would be an improved street with wide footpaths, improved lighting and spaces to sit and socialise. Located at the heart of the neighbourhood, the new park would have places to sit, rest and play, including a multi-use games area, a venture play area, junior play area, pond, nature trails, new trees and planting and swales. Clear paths through the park would connect to these spaces. Potter's Path is about reinstating the historic path between the heart of the Abbey and Thetford Town Centre by reimagining the existing pedestrian footpath from the shops to the town as Potter's Path, a clear, safe, east-west route from the neighbourhood heart and park towards the footpath network which connects to the town centre is proposed to be created. With new homes fronting onto it, doorstep green spaces to play and lighting interventions, Potter's Path will be a safe pedestrian and cycle priority connection. The Riverside, enhanced connections from the neighbourhood park in the heart of the Abbey towards the Little Ouse River will promote the Riverside as both a recreational and ecological asset for the local community and improve the offer of open space for residents of the Abbey. And finally, the Greenway, a new connection from the rail to river. The Greenway will improve the access to the Riverside, a linear network of green open spaces across the Abbey, which should include food growing areas, public amenity space and play areas, safe pedestrian crossing points across the Canterbury Way. Opportunities exist to enhance biodiversity, and new homes are to overlook the Greenway and have easy access to the green space. With regards to the site members, we have some site photos. So these are site photos looking at the proposed access points, which are matters for consideration, both to the south and north. On the bottom slide, you can see the school in the distance to the south, and then the north access point to the north. I would remind you the Highways Authority have no objections from using these access points for the additional housing growth. And then these are images from around the state. So at the top slide, that shows one of the green wedges that leads down to the little River Ouse or the riverside edge. And then some of these images show the right-hand side, just behind that tree, you can see the flats where approximately the neighbourhood centre would sit. And finally, some images of Canterbury Way just to further show those fronts and the approximate location of the neighbourhood centre. And this is moving further round Canterbury Way to the north, and just to show that continued pattern of 3-storey dwellings, buff brick, frontage garages as you head round Canterbury Way. And finally, this is part of those backs of houses, green wedge. This is actually to the south of Canterbury Way, and then that is that green wedge to the north of Canterbury Way, which also shows those backs of dwellings onto those green spaces with very little in them. This is down of what is called the riverside, being called the riverside edge. So the little River Ouse is to the south of the estate. And here you can see the current footpath that leads along the edge, looking down to the green space of the little River Ouse, which is in the middle to the top of the slides there. And then a further image there to show that a lot of that green space is represented by the backs of dwellings, close border fencing, and other high boundary treatment. This is Exeter Way. On the left-hand side is a view of the community centre. On the right-hand side is a view of the shops. And then again at Exeter Way, on the left-hand side, the existing shops with residential flats above to create the neighbourhood heart. And then on the right-hand side is the existing bungalows that lead up to that row of shops, showing the existing parking and access arrangements from that direction to the shops. This is York Way behind the existing shops, so the garage courts, the access to the flats at the back, and then on the right-hand side behind the flats, showing one of the 2 laps that exist on the site with just a moderate amount of play equipment. And again, some images of the property types along York Way using a darker brick in this location. Primarily 2 and single-storey flat roof bungalows at the end of York Way. And then here, members, we have some images along Edinburgh Way. So on the left-hand side, you can show that connection to the woodland, where some of the principles are to open up that connection and accessibility. And on the right-hand side, some of the property types that exist along Edinburgh Way, And then this is the top of Edinburgh Way, these properties. Currently, this is a dead end, but part of the proposals are to create along the railway edge a new access route running parallel with these properties to improve the linkages between the spur roads that exist in this part of the estate. And then these are the properties at the end of Ripon Way, an example of the garage courts, 2 stories, buff brick properties. This is so you get an idea of the different house types that exist currently within the site. And this is Salisbury Way. And this just shows the, on the left-hand side, some of the property types that exist along that route, about 2-storey dark brick, garages out to the front. And then on the right-hand side, this is that green wedge that we saw off Canterbury Way running down the back of Salisbury Way. And finally, here we just have some images of some of the existing garage courts type and layout that exist across the state. And finally, back to the location plan. So in terms of the recommendation, members, the application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions listed in the report, with delegation to officers to amend and update conditions, as well as a Section 106 agreement to secure 25% affordable housing, open space, including amount and maintenance, education contributions as requested by the County Council, a library contribution, an air quality contribution, Norfolk Rams contributions, and biodiversity net gain. The NHS contributions are not sought when taking into consideration the recent court cases as set out in the report, which require the justification of these contributions, which has not been provided. Nor has the Thetford Priory improvement contribution been requested, as there is no identified impact on heritage assets to warrant a contribution in this regard. Norfolk County Council Education has sent a further letter since the publication of the further supplementary report, expressing their disappointment with regards to what is set out in the officer report with regards to education contributions. Although this is noted, full education contributions have been offered by the applicant and will be sought in any subsequent Section 106 agreement. The application has also been screened under the EIA regulations, and no environmental impact assessment is considered necessary at this time. Members, in terms of the planning balance, the potential impacts upon designated heritage assets, with regards to the potential impacts on designated heritage assets, it's been assessed that there could be some potential conflict. However, this is limited to less than substantial harm at the lower end of the scale and is outweighed by public benefits. Other conflicts identified in terms of the retail impact and employment, open space matters, arboricultural impacts, and flood risk and drainage matters. It is unnecessary for you to find strict compliance with each and every development plan policy. Ultimately, it's compliance with the development plan as a whole that is important. Even in a situation where, due to impacts or other matters arising from the proposal, other policies of the development plan are found to be conflicted with, officers still consider that the compliance as a whole has been demonstrated and do not consider material planning considerations would outweigh approval. Even if it was concluded that the development plan was not complied with as a whole, there are significant benefits associated with this proposal and the regeneration of the Abbey estate. Such benefits include the economic and social benefits of the regeneration, in addition to the delivery of additional housing, both market and affordable. Furthermore, there are no material considerations with a significant weight attached to the public sector equality duty considerations, less than substantial harm or conflict in terms of town centre uses or flood risk and drainage that weigh in the balance that would justify refusal. Additionally, in light of the shortfall in the Council's 5-year housing land supply, paragraph 11D of the NPPF is activated, which engages the presumption in favour of sustainable development. The proposals are considered to be in a sustainable location and would make effective use of land. Whilst the application is in outline format, it is considered that the illustrative plans have demonstrated that the proposal can be well designed and that the design and access statement provides a comprehensive framework to guide the detailed design process. Economic benefits of the proposal include the creation of 93 full-time equivalent construction jobs and associated benefits to the local economy over the course of the build-out. Permanent jobs will be created within the local shops and services situated within the enhanced neighbourhood centre, albeit some facilities already exist on the estate. The applicant has referenced SME-focused procurement, which could generate up to 27 million for the local economy. In addition, the increase in population associated with the uplift of 500 homes would result in further benefits to local businesses and Thetford Town Centre. Overall, these are considered to be of moderate benefit to the local economy of Breckland. The social benefits of the proposals are considered to be significant in terms of providing much-needed dwellings to boost the council's shortfall in housing land supply, but also through providing a policy-compliant level of on-site affordable housing and also specialist housing with care which is needed in Breckland. Illustrative plans depict a well-connected, permeable, pedestrian and community-friendly estate. The existing abbey suffers from issues with antisocial behaviour due to the absence of properly overlooked streets and poorly purposed green space. One of the key benefits of the redesigned estate would be an emphasis on passive surveillance and opportunities to build a stronger community through inclusive and active design. Other benefits include the provision of improved bus stop infrastructure, which would aid more sustainable travel, but also to a degree the social inclusion of existing residents. There will also be qualitative improvements in children's play and there will also be quantitative improvements in children's play and qualitative improvements in open space across the estate, while there will also be an overall loss in quantum over the estate. Such improvements are considered to bring tangible social benefits. Environmental benefits include the regeneration of an existing housing estate in a sustainable location and the provision of adequate biodiversity mitigation and enhancements, including significant additional tree and hedgerow planting across the site, whilst acknowledging some trees will require to be removed. Improved sustainable drainage infrastructure to include swales, rain gardens and attenuation basins. Additionally, it's considered that qualitative improvements to open space across the site will result in biodiversity benefits. There will also be a 10% increase in BNG. Weighed against the benefits of the proposal are the loss of the Category B woodland. However, satisfactory long-term mitigation is proposed and there will be an overall long-term increase in trees and hedgerows across the estate. Additionally, impacts associated with demolition and construction over a prolonged period of time will undoubtedly impact the amenity of existing and future residents alike. However, it is considered these impacts can be satisfactorily mitigated and controlled by suitably worded planning conditions. Therefore, it's considered there will be no adverse impacts that would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the regeneration proposals, nor are there any policies in the NPPF that officers would, as a matter of planning judgment, justify refusal. It must finally be considered that there is significant local opposition to the proposals for a wide range of reasons that are summarised in the officer report. However, the concerns raised through the consultation process have been fully considered by officers, having regard to the public sector equality duty under the Equality Act. It should also be noted that many of the concerns focus on matters that are capable of being considered and agreed through the reserved matters process. Also, these are only one of many material considerations which must be taken into consideration in the determination of this application, but also in the context of compliance with the development plan as a whole, which, subject to conditions, overall compliance with the development plan is found. So, members, to summarise, the recommendation for this application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to a Section 106 agreement. No objections to the Council's appropriate assessment from Natural England pursuant to the Conservation of Species Habitat Regulations, and conditions with delegation to update, change, remove or amend, add conditions as necessary to make the development acceptable prior to the issuing of the decision. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. You can all fidget now. Okay. We now move on to a list I have of registered speakers, and I've got all the names and allotted times, which you've all been notified. And just to let you know that when the time is up, which I shall be noting on a stopwatch here, you'll hear the bell, and that will mean if you could just sum up and just complete your nearest sentence. It doesn't mean please carry on. Oh, please carry on for another 15 minutes. It just means if you could come to a halt, because we've got quite a list of people to get through. So we're going to start with Councillor Terry Land, who's representing Thetford Town Council, and you have 5 minutes, please, Terry.
Thank you, Chair. I speak today as an advocate for the residents of the Abbey. Over the past 3 or so years, our group have spoken to roughly half of the households on the estate and have a good feeling for the wishes of residents. A quick bit about me first, if you'll indulge me. I grew up kicking a football around my local park with my mates, despite chronic asthma. I then went on to play many sports for my school, entered work and played organised sports. As I grew older, I transferred my passion to spectating and became a season ticket at West Ham for nearly 3 decades. And for many years, I worked as a journalist on the sports desk of national newspapers. In that light, the loss of something over the area of 7 full-sized football pitches worth of green space, should this application be successful, is terrifying. Breckland regulations are very precise, and I quote, "Where it is considered that the development will have a detrimental effect on the quantity or function of existing green infrastructure, compensatory provision will be required in the form of new and/or enhancements to the existing green infrastructure." I don't see any such mitigation in this proposal. Your report states that the existing green spaces aren't very well used. Hardly surprising, really, given the attention from both Flagship and Breckland has been minimal. This reflects, I believe, a wider policy of Flagship, which I would refer to as managed decline. Having worked hard to improve the estate myself, I know it's very difficult to get Flagship to attend to their grounds, and no online process to request they do so, as there is with Breckland and County. Councillors and residents clear litter. Furthermore, when it comes to interior maintenance for tenants, the process is slow and difficult. A couple of years ago, the architects for this plan, Levitt Bernstein, very generously offered residents and councillors a trip to London to see previous developments they'd engineered. The first development in Poplar had beautiful little parks with ponds and bridges, etc. But they were to be viewed, not enjoyed. Elsewhere, everywhere we looked were signs saying, "No ball games." Over the entire estate, play was forbidden. Our second view was the Ocean Estate near Mile End. That was around 15 years old, had been badly neglected, and was fast approaching slum status. Given their record on upkeep, that is my fear for the future of the Abbey estate under Flagship. This contract will take 18 to 20 years to complete. That is an entire generation of children subject to noise, dust, and lorries trundling through the estate. As much as I fear for young lungs afflicted as I am by asthma, the mental health toll will also be severe. I am concerned about the proposed parking provision on the site. These currently show the provision would be 613 spaces fewer than the published Norfolk County Council requirements. These figures do not include the loss of all existing 726 garages, some of which do contain smaller cars. The car parking strategy proposed by the applicant seeks to replace existing parking arrangements with a very high quantity of on-street parking and parking barns. This is detrimental to the overall street scene on the estate, increases the chance of crime, causes considerable difficulty for those who become disabled, and does not take account of the need for new car technology in the form of electric car charging. 10 years from now, many car owners will need to be able to charge their vehicles overnight, and will want to do so by connecting to their own EV charging supply for ease of use and cost. This has not been factored into the proposals, other than to say it will be a reserved matters consideration. To take account of approved document S, brackets EV charging, of the building regulations, Breckland's own design guide, and the need to comply with Norfolk County Council's parking standards, could very well require a dramatic redesign of the entire estate and overall spatial strategy. While your planning officer's report says this will be a future reserved application matter, I contend this matter is crucial to the overall spatial strategy and density of the estate, and should be considered at outline stage now as part of your deliberations. In closing, I was trying to explain the basis of this plan to a friend last night. The words I used were something like, "This project isn't about solving a crisis in housing in Breckland, but indulging the acquisitiveness of Flagship Bomford." Thank you.
Thank you. That was 5 minutes well spent in front of the bathroom mirror, Terry. It really was, to get that spot on. Okay, we've got Phil Williams, please, who's a local organiser, Thetford Food Bank.
Good afternoon. Thanks for allowing me to speak. Like I said, my name's Phil Williams from Thetford Food Bank, and I'm speaking really on behalf of the ARC group, which is Abbey Residents Conversation Group, which is made up of tenants and families from the Abbey estate who use our local food bank. And our views that we're putting forward today are based on countless one-to-one conversations and a community discussion held this month. And all of the people in the group understand the need for regeneration and support investment in our community, but the people who already live on the Abbey estate are the ones who will really carry any of this disruption that's bound to come. And we've got a number of concerns, but our greatest concern for this group is displacement. And I understand your decision is in regard to the principle of demolition, but I'd like to remind you all that these are people's homes, and that I'd ask you the question, would you agree in principle to the demolition of your home? And this redevelopment is planned to unfold, like Terry said, over 20 years, with phasing still indicative, and that means many households could be moved away before any new local homes are ready, which we see as problematic. And if that happens, that means children will lose their schools, carers will lose proximity to people they look after, and many vulnerable residents could be isolated from needed support networks. And I want to stress that these aren't abstract worries, these are actually planning matters. And the council's own policies on phasing affordable housing and the equality duty require developments to protect community cohesion and to avoid avoidable hardship. And so, you know, I think that regeneration that uproots existing residents without clear re-provision risks breaching those principles. And so I think every member of the planning committee has received our letter from ARC setting out 8 material planning points covering a range of things, but all of them link back to one simple ask, and that's to make sure renewal does not come at the expense of the people who already call the Abbey their home. And we understand this is an outline application, but this decision still sets the framework for everything that follows. So today we respectfully ask that if you are to be minded to approve this application, you would attach a firm condition or Section 106 obligation requiring a relocation and phasing plan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. We've now got Lorraine Douglas of the Abbey Action Group. Lorraine, you also have 2.5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. There are more reasons to oppose this application than I've got time to address, so I'll focus on some omissions in what is an unduly optimistic report, which is not just the recommendation to agree the access points to Abbey Farm, but an approval in principle to the demolition of up to 551 good quality family homes and 726 garages, of which 427 are within the curtilage of people's homes, and for the remaining 536 households to live on a building site for 20 years. Even the planning officer describes this as a unique application. Of the 417 or so homes sold under the right to buy, around 300 are let to private tenants who will not be offered any alternative housing by Flagship, nor compensation for the loss of their homes. The council has a statutory duty under section 4.2 of the 2017 Homelessness Reduction Act to take reasonable steps to prevent homelessness. Do you know how many private tenants face homelessness as a result of this proposal? If private landlords take Flagship's advice to evict their tenants so they can sell their property for demolition, Breckland District Council will have a duty to accommodate and procure alternative housing for homeless private tenants eligible for assistance and in priority need. If the landlords instead choose to continue to receive rental income pending a compulsory purchase order, their tenants will then presumably become the council's or Flagship's tenants. What will be their rights in relation to rehousing and compensation? Breckland's latest P1E return showed you had 113 homeless households in temporary accommodation at the end of March. In the last financial year, temporary accommodation cost Breckland Council over £400,000. What is the financial risk to Breckland of an increase in homelessness as a result of this application? The council's enabling officer states that any social rented homes demolished should be replaced 1-for-1 in addition to the 25% affordable housing contribution, which should be 90% rented, favouring social rent reflecting the housing need as set out in Breckland's housing strategy. The application makes no mention of any social rent properties. So, do you know how many social rented homes will be lost because of this application, and what impact will this have on your housing strategy? This proposal will only deliver an average of 25 additional homes per year over the lifetime of the project, so no appreciable impact on Breckland's annual housing targets. Will the council... I'll finish then by saying 1 in 10 of Thetford's residents live on this estate. The whole town will be impacted, and not in a good way. As councillors, you've a duty to ensure you're aware of all relevant facts before making a decision. Are you satisfied you're aware of all material facts that have financial and legal implications for the council? If not, reject the application.
Thank you. We now have Neil Doring, also of the Abbey Action Group. Neil, you have 2.5 minutes, please.
Hi, thank you. I rent out a property on Ripon Way, and I also live on Guildford Way. I have been told that I have to evict my tenants, who are first-class tenants. They have no comeback to having a property from the flagship, have told me they get nothing. I'm not prepared to do this as a Christian. It is morally wrong. Give them a home, I will happily do that. Also, I'd like to point out phase 1. Why is phase 1 where it is? You could start phase 1 where you've got phase 4 at the present if you pass this. Because there you can build new properties without having to demolish any existing properties. Then you move people into those homes, not into Brandon and Watton. It would be much better for those people to stay on the estate. In the past, it's been pointed out to me by some of the so-called undesirables that they used to love it when the kitchen lights went on, because they could see the people in their houses. But at night time, they can't be seen when the lights are on. So the excuse given earlier about the garages coming down and adding to more security is just that. It's an excuse. Also, I noticed on the photographs earlier, nothing on Potter's Way. No photographs of Potter's Way. Why? Because it's already fine as it is. But Flagship are trying to take some credit for something that's already good and used by the majority of people on the estate. These aspects need to be looked at carefully. In my street, we did a garage check, and 16 of the 18 garages, the people want to keep them. Now, at a meeting chaired by Liz Trust, Flagship said if the majority of people wanted to keep their garages on a street-by-street vote, they would honour that. You yourselves have received this petition. It was sent in by myself, showing that most people want to keep it. But Flagship still want to knock it down. Another lie from Flagship. You've been fed a lot of lies we've read out today, and a lot of it are lies. Thank you.
Thank you. I now have Denise Wyndham, please, of the Abbey Estate Committee. Denise, you also have 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you. Flagship keep mentioning that they have consulted with the residents and will continue to do so. Whenever we went to the meetings, at no time did they make any notes about our views, needs or worries. They have made so many promises and have reneged on them, i.e. like-for-like houses, not removing garages. We do not want to live the next 10 to 20 years on a building site with lorries carrying rubble, aggregate, etc. past our front door 5 to 6 days a week. Plus all the dirt and dust and air pollution. Also, they will be passing the school. Surely this will be a safety problem in the respect of the children's health. On the subject of air pollution, they are removing so many trees and green spaces that won't be good for our health or mental health, and it's not good for the local wildlife and animals. On a personal note, we have had 5 years plus to worry about this, not knowing what the future holds, as have had the others on the estate. At the age of 70, we don't want a mortgage, or would we get one on another property? We have lived on the farm for 20 plus years. We wouldn't consider buying a house without a back garden, which is extremely important to us, or have to park our car or walk away from your front door. This will impact on so many of the residents, young and old. This planned concrete jungle is purely for the benefit of Flagship. We are not against change as long as it is for the good. What is planned is no way the good for the residents of Abbey Farm. It will be a nightmare to police in respect of the vehicles. It will also mean that residents' car insurance will go up. In fact, many parts of the plans will cost the residents more money. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Fiona Kean, who's a homeowner. Fiona, you also have 2.5 minutes.
Hello there. My name is Fiona Kiani. I'm a homeowner whose house will be lost if these proposals are agreed. Please consider the impact of Flagship's proposals and your willingness to approve them. The people who live on the estate are not just statistics on an index of deprivation. We are families, individuals, children who will be directly affected by these changes. We all know that progress is necessary, but not at the cost of our community, especially our well-being and quality of life. We have the right to object to plans and try and save our homes. These plans will devastate us for years to come. The plans will take away our green spaces. These are important to us. Our greens are beautiful, significant to our wildlife, have seen many celebrations, parties, good times. Our greens have helped our children's potential with sports and recreation. It's helped our well-being, and if you recall the pandemic when it hit us hard, our back greens provided tranquility and beauty during this worrying time. Article 8 protects the right to our privacy and family life. The Abbey Farm was an award-winning place when it was first built. To me, it should be listed and looked after. It does have an historic significance to Thetford. These are some extracts from Breckland's local plan, the full update, January 23. It states, green spaces create a sense of place that connects communities to the countryside and provide spaces for wildlife to thrive. We are sandwiched right between the River Little Ouse and the Thetford Forest. It is beautiful. Criterion 3 states the council would expect the size of the area to be reasonably related to the community it serves. It also states it allows communities to identify and protect green spaces that are important to them. The Abbey Farm is not a village, it's not an ancient woodland. We don't have no special protection. We're not a nature reserve. We're not a heritage site or Grade 2 listed building. But we should have, because we are a community that values our home and where we live. Changes is needed, but not at the expense of good, hard-working people who have lived peacefully and respectful lives on this estate. Flagship's plans will take away our green spaces, and Flagship can't look after their own properties now. What it's going to be like in the future, I don't know. To me, this is all of them have been able to allow this estate to be a managed decline over the years. Please consider the impact of Flagship's proposals on the people who live here and made the estate their homes. The loss of green space is too much. The additional traffic will be too much. The residents are against this. Please, they will be displaced and it will utterly destroy our community.
Thank you. I now have Ruhan Jadhiv, who's a freehold owner of Londis and Rima Food Market. 2.5 minutes, sir.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Rohan Jadav, and I speak on behalf of my family, the freeholders of the Essential Retail Unit, Londis Rima Food Market, as just mentioned. We've been serving Abbey residents for over 40 years. Members will have seen my written submission in the late representations pack. This summarises the unresolved safeguards and business continuity and access for an established community business. This isn't just about one business, it's about whether regeneration is delivered lawfully in line with planning policy and Ecology's duties, and whether vulnerable residents are protected during a 20-year build programme. First, the Breckland local plan protects community facilities and local centres. Our shop is a daily lifeline for residents, yet there is no guaranteed retail continuity during construction. That is a direct conflict with the development plan, which members are legally required to follow. Second, members must discharge the public sector equality duty. Many of our customers are older, disabled, or on low incomes. They rely on walkable, affordable shopping. The committee report includes no equalities assessment or mitigation, showing how these residents will access essential retail during phasing. Approving without that evidence creates legal risk and justifies deferral. The MPPF calls for healthy, inclusive, and safe spaces. Approving a scheme of this scale without binding protections undermines that principle. The risk isn't at the end, it's the intervening years when residents could lose walkable access altogether. And finally, fourth, there are no enforceable conditions or Section 106 obligations securing a temporary trading unit, sequenced handover, a construction traffic management plan that guarantees safe, step-free pedestrian access. Verbal assurances are not legally binding. Government guidance is clear. These protections must be necessary, precise, and enforceable before works begin. Our ask is simple: refuse or defer this application until the following are secured: a temporary trading strategy guaranteeing continuous essential retail, a phasing and CTMP securing safe pedestrian access, a published equalities impact addendum, addressing the needs of vulnerable residents. Just to wrap up, I think regeneration should strengthen the community that's here, not displace it. If these safeguards can't be drafted tonight, I respectfully ask members to defer the decision until they can. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we have Marion Maltwood, who is speaking on behalf of herself and other residents. 2.5 minutes, please, Marion.
My family moved to the Abbey Farm estate in May 1970. We were delighted to have a brand new home on a lovely open estate with plenty of green spaces where children could safely play. The same green spaces that Flagship planned to reduce in size by building on. In 1988, we purchased our house from Breckland District Council under the Right to Buy scheme. So it seems ironic that Breckland District Council is considering allowing Flagship to demolish my home. And is Breckland District Council ready to spend council taxpayers' money on pursuing compulsory purchase orders? There are over 500 privately owned homes on the estate. Under Article 1 of Protocol 1 of the European Convention of Human Rights, every individual has a right to respect for their private and family life and to the peaceful enjoyment of their property. There is surely a risk of conflict of interest here. How can Breckland District Council be impartial in this matter if they are backing this scheme? An Englishman's home is his castle, but not if you live on the Abbey Farm estate. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. We've now got Keith Wolfenden, who's landlord and resident. 2.5 minutes, please, sir.
Throughout these consultations with Flagship, we have not been told the truth. When these consultations first started, I asked at the meeting about our garages. I heard rumours that we might lose them. I spoke to a member of Flagship about this matter, and I was told that if we had a garage of our own, it would not be a problem. We would be able to keep it. About 10 minutes later, at the same meeting, I asked the same question to a different Flagship member, and I was told that we may have our garage taken from us as part of the improvements. I then asked, improvements for who? To which I received no answer. In one of their latest consultations, I noticed that there was new diagrams for the houses. It looked to me that they were indicating that cladding would be used. When I mentioned this, they told me there would be no cladding used. A few days later, we received a new brochure, and in it, Flagship are calling it cladding. So they're even denying information that's in their own paperwork. At the consultations, we were spoken to individually, not as a group. In that way, they could say whatever they want and later deny saying it, which is what they do. I've spoken to my neighbours about answers that were given to certain questions, and everyone, in my opinion, were given different answers to similar questions. Every time we see their plans get worse. I feel that they're trying to get away with as much as they can. I need my garage for my tools and ladders in it. I'm immediate support for my neighbours. If they need any small jobs done, I normally have the tool for the job. I also need my garage for my bikes. I have 3. I use my bikes for my exercise, which I need. We have a community on the estate. We feel that if this plan goes ahead, our community will be ripped apart. My partner and I are in our 70s. We need to park our car close to our house to unload shopping, etc. If these plans are approved, we may not be able to park on the same streets.
Thank you, Keith. We've got Jennifer Barrett, please, who's a homeowner and resident, and you have 2.5 minutes also.
We moved to the Abbey Estate 51 years ago, brought up 3 generations of children on this estate. At present, my great-granddaughter is safe to walk to and from school. That would all change. It would be too dangerous with all the extra traffic. At the moment, our green is used for recreational play, used daily, weather permitting, even in the winter, as it has been for the last 60 years. My great-granddaughter plays all types of sports with her friends out on our recreational green, their only safe space. That opportunity would be gone, as our green space at the back of St Albans Way is being reduced by 3/4. The top of the green play area would be cut off by the housing built on the lane, then the housing built at the bottom of the green. That leaves a very small area for the children to play any type of sports, not even big enough to play football with her friends. This is their only safe recreational space. Nobody is considering our children growing up on this estate with all the disruption, dirt and pollution from the demolition and building for the next 20 years and the effect that could have on their health and future mental health. I bought my house 30 years ago as my forever home because of the garage, garden and drive. Without them, the house is useless to me, as I have my mobility scooter stored and charged in my garage. I'm too old to be fighting for parking space outside my home. I urge you to reject this application. We, the people of Abbey Estate, deserve better than this. It will erase a community, scatter its residents, and betray the very people you are elected to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I've now got Councillor David Bick, who I believe is the County Councillor. I've got him on my list. Oh, he's gone off there, has he? Okay, thank you. You're on my previous list then. You've gone. You've disappeared, sir. Sorry. Lynn Austin. Okay, so I do apologise. Someone changed the list and didn't tell me. Not that I'm important at all, but Lynn, you have 2.5 minutes also, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman. I am a resident tenant of Flagships, and I'm here basically to say, yes, there was no consultation or meaningful conversation with Flagship. The lack of transparency throughout the process has left many residents feeling unheard and frustrated. The decisions appear to have been made without proper engagement or consideration for those who are directly affected, undermining confidence in both the consultation and the proposed changes. Can I bring your attention, sir, to how many people have attended this meeting and how many people you've ever seen at a planning committee? I think it's truly wrong. I'm not as old as some of the people, sorry guys, but I'm not as old as some of the other guys, but I have a disability that will get worse. It's not going to get better. And taking away the greens, for what? For more, 500 more houses. They could be located anywhere in Breckland, not necessarily Thetford. The parking issue, although it was never said that parking permits were ruled out, the first we knew about them was when it was quietly slid in to the outline planning permission. No discussion with the residents. This will cause war amongst residents and will only profit the private company that will be running the process. Disabled parking needs to be located where the disabled residents live, or are all disabled people going to live together? That'll be fun. The garages, as noted previously by my friends, was in a meeting with Liz Truss on the 8th of the 3rd, 24. It had been agreed on a street-by-street basis, quote, Flagship will adhere to the will of the residents. In the same meeting, Flagship was supposed to clarify storage and compensation for people who use the communal garages should they be demolished. This has never happened. Why do residents have to find their homes if they're being pushed out of somewhere else and go on to the Breckland's Key Select? Do they not realise how stressful this is? Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you very much. I'm going to stand because I know we've got all our guys here from Bidwell's and from Flagship and... Oh, really? Terry, would you like to go now or do you want to go last? You want to go now? Okay, that's fine. Okay, well, sorry, everything keeps changing on my lists. We've now got Terry Jermy, who's our Member of Parliament. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman, and may I at the outset thank all members of the Planning Committee for your service today. I am pleased to be able to outline in the strongest possible terms why I believe you should vote down this application. I am in no doubt that, put simply, if approved, this application would utterly destroy this community. Far from regenerating it, this plan would be a disaster, resulting in decades of turmoil for residents and fueling greater problems for the town and wider district. The Abbey has always held its green open spaces with deep affection. They provide a space for people to play, to connect with the environment, and whilst I would not say they've always been well looked after by everyone, they are loved. The design of the estate emphasises the green openness. I am sure you would have seen and felt this on your visit to the estate. These proposals before you today will significantly change that, infilling much of the green space with new housing. Car ownership on the Abbey is low. 25% do not have a car. Wages are low too, inequality persists. Families often do not have the luxury of paid-for access to public space. For many, their only opportunity to access public open space is that which is immediately around them. The existing site already has a deficit of nearly 8 hectares of open space. There will be a further reduction of 5.3 hectares. That is the equivalent to 7.5 Premier League-sized football pitches. The applicant has deliberately tried to downplay the importance of the existing open space. With the proposed increase in population, the open space deficit will be even more stark at more than 10 hectares. This application clearly does not comply with your policy, ENV 04. I've always been impressed by the sense of community spirit on the Abbey. Far from being an estate where people want to leave, more often than not they tell me how they want to be there. They know and trust their neighbours. They have a support network around them. By approving this application, you will set into motion the forced compulsory purchase of hundreds of privately owned homes. There is no guarantee homeowners will be able to remain on the Abbey or indeed in Thetford. And if they do get to stay on the Abbey, they'll be living on a building site for 20 years. For many, the remainder of their life will be living in this unrest. This week marked what would have been the 100th birthday of Margaret Thatcher. And it is 45 years ago this month that Mrs. Thatcher's right to buy policy became law, helping people to realise their dream of home ownership. Many tenants on the Abbey estate took up that opportunity. If this application is approved, it will be the ultimate betrayal of those homeowners. I firmly believe that this applicant is demonstrating a willful disregard for the rights of these homeowners as laid down in Article 1 of the First Protocol of the Human Rights Act, which protects a right to enjoy their property peacefully. A public authority cannot take away property or place restrictions on its use without a very good reason. Only 25% of the new homes are to be earmarked as affordable, and that 25% will only be provided over a 20-year period, realising on average 6 units per year. This is hardly inspiring and will do very little to make any meaningful impact on the housing needs of the area. It should also be remembered that the Council's recently published Local Plan Update Draft Regulation 18 documents provide adequate suitable development sites for the duration of the plan, and Breckland Council removed the Abbey Estate site from their local plan because it determined that it was not needed to achieve its housing target. I implore you to reflect on your duty today. You have valid planning reasons to vote this application down. There is a need for investment. The Abbey can be improved, but it should be done first and foremost by working with the existing residents in their interest. This application categorically does not do this. Amongst all of the paperwork, the presentations, all of the noise and the concerns, at the core of this for me, I think about the people living there now. People like Marion, Christine, Doreen, Fiona, Jen and Keith, Lee and Lyndon. These are Thetford residents. They are Breckland residents. In most cases, they have achieved what we would all want, a home of their own, paid their mortgage, wanting to see out their days in the place they feel comfortable, where their children have grown up or a loved one has passed away. They did not ask for this. They do not deserve this. We can and must do better, and that's why I urge you to refuse this application.
Look, I will stand up now simply because I can't see anyone from sitting down here. I'm now going to hand over to representatives of Flagship, Bidwells and Levitt Bernstein. You've got... No, you're coming at the end. Okay, I have got a list, but everyone keeps moving it about. You've got 25 minutes, and I'm going to allow you to sort that time out yourself. And could you just introduce yourselves as you speak and who you represent, please? Okay, I didn't think I had to explain it, but what it is objectors have 25 minutes, so applicants have 25 minutes. So if there was only one of you speaking and you had 5 minutes, then we would have 5 minutes on the other side. So it's just a balance so that we get a level argument, okay? If they just take 10 minutes, we can all move on. But they've got up to 25 minutes and I am timing it. Okay, thank you. Over to you, please.
Thank you. I'm James Payne from Flagship. For all the reasons explained in the officer's report, Thetford remains a sustainable and fantastic location for homes. Across the span of our entire area, it's a vitally important place for us to focus on too. A place where we want to retain a strong presence, to maintain but also grow and renew our property portfolio to help the growing housing need in the area, and to continue to offer affordable homes for the next 100 years and beyond and make sure that we can help as many people and as many families find quality homes. But to do this, we must recognise that housing needs and expectations have and will continue to change over time. We know that our tenants want and need different things now than what they did when our homes were first built. Changes to regulations and housing standards too mean that we will have to provide different products, services and standards in the future. And environmental changes will heap even more pressure on our homes and our customers in the future. And for the Abbey and so many other housing areas like it, our homes need to change, to evolve and adapt to meet the changing needs and expectations of both our customers and wider society. The Abbey estate was conceived in a very different time for housing design, and the officer's report has explained some of the issues that Radburn design layouts create. And we know firsthand from engagement the extent of challenges this starts to present on the ground. If we take the same approach that we have, or even do more of the same, we don't believe it will be enough to improve those aspects and make the sustainable change that's needed. And as we look forward to the next 100 years, these challenges will become even more apparent as the type of homes, the layouts, design and facilities they offer will need to look starkly different to help families to thrive. Our homes need to adapt over the longer term too, to provide better quality of accommodation for our tenants. We share an ambition for the area that we want better quality homes for our tenants. We want more choices of property type and tenure, including affordable home ownership. We want our homes to be more affordable by reducing running costs and heating costs, for them to be safer, warmer, more sustainable as the effects of climate change continue to be felt. But more than that, we want to provide a better environment for future generations to thrive, to help design out and reduce crime, to improve health outcomes and increase life expectancy, to improve education outcomes and increase the employment opportunities and skills attainment, particularly for younger people. The empirical evidence of regeneration is that all this is possible with high quality, well-designed homes and places when we develop safer, connected, well-overlooked streets with better parking and lighting provision, with improved green spaces, biodiversity and facilities for everybody, and with more resilient infrastructure that can cope with the increased challenges that different vehicle usage and climate change will continue to bring over the next 100 years and beyond. But delivering that sort of change is not straightforward. It is complex and it's challenging, and we know this is very unsettling, and given so much of the detail that people will want will be developed and clarified as part of the phased reserve matters applications, a stage where we will continue to engage and consult on what each phase contains and at a property level, ensuring that we understand and can accommodate individual needs. We recognise that any level of disruption is, of course, hard for everybody concerned and not a decision that is taken lightly. But without it, delivering the changes that are so desperately needed to homes and places, impacting the social outcomes we've touched on, for the thousands of people living on the Abbey and for future generations, will simply not be possible.
Good afternoon. My name's Simon Lee from Levitt Bernstein. Levitt Bernstein are urban designers, landscape architects, and architects. We have taken a placemaking-led approach to developing a vision for the Abbey, central to which has been gaining an on-the-ground understanding of what works and what doesn't work, the needs and aspirations of residents, the technical and practical considerations about how the Abbey works, and aligning with Flagship's vision for a more sustainable regeneration which prioritises social outcomes. If I could go to the next slide, please. We have built up this knowledge through extensive community engagement over the past 6 years, which is summarised on the screen in front of you. And this is also described in detail for members in the Statement of Community Involvement. This is in addition to stakeholder engagement and has included varying engagement methods and opportunities for feedback prior to and throughout the design process, and more recently incorporates an independent tenant and leaseholder advisor to provide residents to give more support throughout the process. Flagship are committed to continuing the engagement process throughout any further design stages to ensure the design informed by those that live on the Abbey. Next slide, please. From the outset, the key objectives for the Abbey have been to put people at the heart of the design process through engagement to create a vision which brings benefits for everyone on the Abbey, using a holistic approach to sustainability, which balances social and economic factors with health and well-being, ecology and biodiversity, and a drive towards lower carbon lifestyles and sustainable transport. Our objectives include benefits for residents of all ages, including creating a more child-friendly neighbourhood, promoting better health and well-being through improvements to walking and cycling routes, addressing issues and concerns of antisocial behaviour through designing out crime, promoting low-carbon lifestyles, providing high-quality homes that are safe, warm, affordable, and importantly, much cheaper to run and no smaller than existing homes. Considering improvements to all homes and streets and leaving no part of the Abbey behind. Enhancing the existing context of the Abbey with new streets and spaces that reinforces its unique identity. Increasing the quality of open space and overall biodiversity and habitat value. Embedding inclusive design principles into the proposal, and creating a flexible master plan that can adapt over time to the needs of the Abbey community as their needs change over time. I'll now hand over to my colleague, Ruth Richardson.
Thank you, Simon. Good afternoon, I'm Ruth Richardson from Levitt Bernstein. The overarching vision takes account of the unique setting of the Abbey, the site's character and the character of its immediate surroundings, including the rich woodland to the west, the Abbey meadows and proximity to the River Little Ouse to the south, the railway and industrial context to the north, and the town centre and heritage assets to the east, thinking about the bigger picture as well as the inherent characteristics of the site itself. Any proposals for the Abbey will draw upon this context, reinforce roots and connections, and ensure that the Abbey is well integrated with the surrounding area. If I could go to the next slide, please. We have developed a placemaking strategy based on this and the valuable insights, knowledge and ideas from residents which have collectively been instrumental in shaping a series of design principles as set out in the Design and Access Statement. These include, for example, the creation of a new park to benefit the community, the reinforcement of a historic connection to the town centre, homes which provide surveillance or eyes on the street for improved safety and security, and the transformation of underutilised garage courts. These high-level principles are stitched together to form the structure of the master plan as you can see on screen now, from which a more detailed design solution for the streets, spaces and homes will follow. We understand that things change and evolve over time, including the needs and aspirations of residents, and so this approach is designed to permit flexibility. Next slide, please. As outlined by the case officer, the illustrative master plan is one way in which the vision, objectives and placemaking strategy can be interpreted, and therefore not the only way. As phases come forward, these may look different to the image on screen now in response to further consultation with residents. Development could include a mix of retained homes, replacement homes, and opportunities for retrofit, alongside works to landscape and public realm. Should permission be granted, we will continue to develop proposals for the Abbey in response to feedback from residents prior to bringing Reserve Matters proposals back to this committee. The vision for the Abbey is designed to be adaptable to accommodate this. Next slide, please. The vision draws on the site's context through a series of character areas, which bring interest and diversity to the streets, spaces, buildings and landscape, and could use key features, planting or materiality synonymous with that context. Next slide, please. The following set of images show some of the key design principles or features of the placemaking strategy. These visualizations have been included to give an idea of the high quality of development, sustainability benefits, and the look and feel of what the Abbey could be, should permission be granted. These are not final designs and will change with further input from residents. Next, please stay on this slide, thank you. The image on screen now shows the concept of the lane, currently a sequence of garage courts throughout the Abbey that residents told us suffer from antisocial behaviour and connected by poorly lit footpaths as seen in the image bottom right. The lane provides an opportunity to create a family-friendly pedestrian and cycle priority route in its place and promote sustainable travel options, overlooked from homes to improve safety and security. The route also encourages the safe movement of children and brings new opportunities for play on the way. Next slide, please. This is Potter's Path, designed to reinforce the existing footpath towards Thetford Priory in the town centre, which is in the location of the historic Potter's Cross path. The engagement process highlighted that despite the Abbey's proximity to the town centre, this existing route was underutilised because it doesn't feel safe, is poorly lit and has no resting or seating places. The transformation of this footpath into Potter's Path encourages healthier walking and cycling, promotes inclusive design and plays a better role in connecting the Abbey with the surrounding area. Next slide, please. One of the most common themes to emerge throughout the engagement process was the need for things for children and young people to do and improved opportunities for play for children of all ages. The opportunity to open up the centre of the Abbey and create the neighbourhood heart would allow for a new community park with play for the youngest and the oldest children and spaces for adults and elderly people to enjoy, diversifying the open space offer. Re-provision of the community centre and existing businesses in purpose-built, energy-efficient new buildings, along with opportunities for new facilities, would bring further social and economic benefits to the community. Next slide, please. Throughout the engagement process, residents spoke to us very fondly about the riverside as a place where families and friends would gather. Our vision seeks to celebrate the existing ecological assets of the area and reimagine the riverside as a destination again. The design of the riverside will respect the Greater Thetford Partnership's aspirations for the Abbey Meadows to improve health and well-being through access to nature. Safer, more accessible connections through this space will stitch it better into the open space network and enhance wildlife corridors. New or reconfigured homes would provide activity and surveillance along this southern edge of the estate. Next slide, please. One of Flagship's overarching visions is to ensure that no resident or part of the Abbey is left behind, and therefore the vision seeks to consider the transformation of all existing streets, bringing more trees and planting into the streetscape to enhance biodiversity. Reorganised parking and sustainable drainage solutions could also be integrated into the design, along with the retrofit of retained homes. The images on screen now illustrate a before and after of Guildford Way as an example of this. Next slide, please. Canterbury Way would remain central to the Abbey and offers an opportunity to create streets that benefit everyone. Residents identified traffic speed alongside the lack of safe and accessible crossing points and absence of seating at bus stops as key issues related to Canterbury Way. The street could be transformed to be inclusive to young and old people, families with pushchairs and those with accessibility needs. It could be safer with increased overlooking through surveillance from homes and traffic calming and parking which is clearly delineated and doesn't inhibit the safe and continuous movement of those who are walking and cycling. It could also encourage the use of sustainable transport with new infrastructure at bus stops. Next slide, please. This is the Greenway, which is a concept that was born out of a constraint due to the underground pipeline. By turning this into an opportunity, it could provide a new major public green space on the Abbey, connecting north-south, increasing the range of open spaces and play spaces, as identified as something potentially lacking through the engagement process. More natural in character than the back greens today, the Greenway reflects the rural setting of the Abbey and could increase ecological diversity. Next slide, please. And finally, the forest edge provides an example of where proposals reflect the scale and character of their location. Here, lower rise, lower density houses are located amongst groups of trees, drawing on the forest or woodland character and celebrating this as a distinct area of the master plan. This adds variety and interest to the character of buildings and open spaces across the Abbey. Thank you. I'll hand over to Bidwells.
Good afternoon. My name is Ian Hill from Bidwells. The report provided by your officer, as well as today's presentation, are very comprehensive. Accordingly, I do not wish to repeat many of the points that have already been covered. However, I think it would be useful to briefly talk about some of the planning aspects of the project. We recognise that a development of this nature and scale will have an impact on the local community. As a result, we've engaged with key stakeholders at all stages of the application process. The proposal seeks to deliver a high-quality, landscape-led, mixed-use regeneration of the estate that meets an identified need for housing, including affordable housing and care. As we've heard, Thetford, as a key settlement, is identified in the adopted development plan as a highly sustainable location for growth. Furthermore, the estate is within the settlement boundary of Thetford, where, in principle, residential development is acceptable. As we've heard, this application seeks to secure approval only for the principle of the development, as well as access into the site, enabling Flagship to invest with confidence in their vision for the site. Detailed matters relating to scale, mass, landscaping and appearance are reserved for future determination, as is phasing. The desire to see the regeneration of the estate is also supported in the Thetford Area Action Plan, albeit subject to a number of criteria, such as enhanced public realm, vibrant streetscapes and high design standards. Whilst these matters will be addressed through future reserve matters applications, based on the illustrative material presented, we are confident these can be satisfied. As we've heard, the proposed development will be on what is termed brownfield land. Revisions to government guidance in late 2024 make it clear that brownfield development should be approved unless substantial harm would be caused. In addition, updated government guidance is also clear that in cases where local authorities have an out-of-date local plan and are unable to demonstrate a 5-year land supply, such as is the case here, a presumption in favour of sustainable development should apply, unless any adverse impacts would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. As your officer has presented, the benefits of the proposed development are clear and extensive and will deliver real, positive change for existing and future residents. Economic benefits relating to job creation and increased local spend contributing to the vitality and viability of the town. Social benefits associated with the provision of high quality, safe, warm and modern housing. Environmental benefits including the effective use of brownfield land in a highly sustainable location, along with improved green infrastructure and biodiversity. In terms of adverse impacts, to ensure a full understanding of those impacts, as well as consultation with the community, the proposals have been arrived at following extensive consultation with statutory consultees, such as the LNFA, Natural England, Norfolk Constabulary and Norfolk County Council Highways. Flagship have taken time, both prior to and following the submission of the application, to ensure that comments raised by these parties have been fully addressed. As we've heard, there are no objections from technical consultees to the proposals before you that cannot be mitigated. Should planning permission be granted, Flagship will continue to work closely with these consultees during the preparation of any reserve matters applications to ensure all technical requirements are identified and potential impacts understood and mitigated. Failure to do so will result in any reserve matters application not being supported. And now I'm back to Simon.
Thank you. I will now address some of the key themes which have been raised by the other speakers so far today and the public representations received during the statutory consultation process. Firstly, the nature of the planning application. As described in the case officer's presentation, the application before the committee is for an outline application for the principle of demolition and the phased redevelopment of the Abbey. All detail matters are reserved and would therefore be subject to further design work and technical justification prior to the submission of a reserve matters application. As you've heard from the case officer, the illustrative master plan is for information only, and it demonstrates just one way in which the detailed proposals could potentially come forward. It does not represent a final proposal, and it is not submitted for approval. A set of key design principles for how the detailed scheme should come forward are set out in the design access statement, which is also submitted for approval. This means we will have to come back at reserved matter stage to agree items such as the number and locations of homes and garages to be demolished, the amount and the arrangement of parking spaces, critically, the amount of open space and the number of new play areas, the height of any new buildings, the density of any new development, and the removal or the planting of additional new trees. Flagship are committed to engaging closely with residents and other stakeholders, including technical officers and local representatives, during the development of these detailed designs, which will come forward on a phase-by-phase basis as set out in the draft planning conditions. Secondly, Flagship recognise that the fear of losing your home or the redevelopment adversely impacting elements of your life, such as children's education, can have a huge impact on those currently living on the Abbey. This is why, back in 2021, during the early stages of the engagement process, Flagship issued a promise document to each and every household, regardless of whether you rented or you owned your own home. For any home potentially affected by the future regeneration, Flagship promised all Abbey residents will be meaningfully consulted with and continue to be engaged with during the regeneration process. Crucially, nobody would be worse off financially as a result of any proposed changes. Any new homes will be more efficient and cheaper to heat than of appropriate size to meet your housing needs. We will continue to manage and maintain your home, attend to repairs and addressing your property needs. If you decide to move, we promise to support you in finding a new home that's suitable to meet your needs. Landlords will be offered fair market value plus compensation, which is compensation code compliant. Private tenants, whilst your tenancy agreement and letting arrangements are between you and your landlord, if demolition was to take place and your home was affected, then we could prioritise any private allocation across the estate for you in terms of private rented accommodation. We understand there are concerns around the density and the type of development on the Abbey. As noted earlier, the density of any proposals will be subject to further detailed design and engagement. The density of the proposals will be informed by a number of technical factors, including the number of new homes, the size of the homes, the size of any open space, and the parking requirements which would be set out by NCC. The illustrative master plan includes an application to show a density of 37 dwellings per hectare, which is an uplift from 31 dwellings per hectare on the existing estate. To give members an idea of what 37 dwellings looks like, it's the same density as the urban extension. The density varies in response to the surrounding context in the illustrative master plan, just as it does on the Abbey today, with lower density levels anticipated along the riverside and the forest edge, and higher residential densities envisaged around the neighbourhood heart. The illustrative master plan demonstrates just one way detailed proposals could come forward, and the final residential density may vary from this, so it could be lower. The officer's report confirmed that the approach shown in the illustrative master plan would represent an efficient use of land at a location suitable for higher density development given its proximity to Thetford town centre. Whilst any works to the Abbey would entail increased noise and dust, Flagship are committed to keeping disruption to those living on the Abbey to an absolute minimum. Flagship will seek to limit disruption by taking a phased approach to carrying out the work. They would focus on one area of the Abbey at a time, completing the work here before moving on to the next phase, so that disruption does not affect all of those living throughout the area. Flagship will also be required to agree a detailed construction management plan for each phase of the works prior to any works being carried out as part of the conditions outlined in the officer's report. This will outline how noise and dust will be managed, including details of limits on noise levels and working hours. The document will also detail good working practices to minimise dust and traffic, such as avoiding routes near schools during drop-off and pick-up times. Flagship are also committed to using good design to further minimise disruption and will investigate opportunities for maximising off-site manufacture of homes or even parts of homes to minimise noise and construction time on the Abbey. Flagship are seeking to make a major investment in the long-term future of the Abbey and have stated that their aim is to improve life for all of those living on the Abbey, regardless of whether they are a Flagship tenant or not. Flagship understand that the uncertainty of how the work impacts residents through the process can have a detrimental impact on mental health, and they're committed to working with residents, involving them, and crucially offering the support they need in the months and years to come.
To conclude, Flagship believe that things could and should be better for the estate, for existing residents and for the next generation. Flagship want to end the housing crisis in the East, which means providing good quality homes, improving existing homes and building new ones to meet local demand. Maintaining the status quo is not good enough. The proposal before you seeks to secure support for the principle of the regeneration of the estate, a framework to guide future development. And the proposals for the regeneration, should planning permission be granted, will be developed in conjunction with key stakeholders, most notably the residents, and will likely be subject to further scrutiny by this committee. The proposal seeks to deliver a high-quality development that will meet an identified need on land that is classed as brownfield land in a highly sustainable locations. They will give rise to significant economic, social and environmental benefits, with any perceived impacts capable of being mitigated. Therefore, the proposals accord with planning policy at all levels. In light of the above, it is evident that there are no planning reasons as to why the outlined permission should not be granted. Accordingly, I hope you feel able to endorse the recommendation of your officer and support the proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we've got Councillor Graham Middleton, who is the neighbouring ward rep for Breckland. 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. I'm speaking to you as chair of the Abbey Farm Action Group. I would like to start by saying that Abbey Farm Estate, when first built, was a lovely estate. People moving from London and elsewhere were delighted to live in the openness of this estate, with grassy areas surrounded by trees. These were very important to families as children's play areas and for community get-togethers, all of which will be lost to build more houses. As you have heard, many residents have lived on the estate for decades and have raised their families in properties as owner-occupiers or tenants and have developed close communities, which people enjoy to this day. Unfortunately, it seems Flagship do not appear to understand this and have not included grassy areas to any great extent in their plans. And the bottom line is people do not want to see their family homes and garages demolished. Car parking will be a massive problem if this regeneration goes ahead, with vehicles parked away from the house, with older and disabled people having to carry their shopping some distance to their homes. I would like you to put yourselves in the place of residents on Abbey Farm for a moment, and to be told that after decades of living in your family home with all the memories that go with it, that your home will be demolished. How would you personally feel? 6 years ago, the plan for redevelopment was proposed with an estimate of 20-year build time. Again, without consideration for the occupiers living their daily lives. And for homeowners, planning blight has caused a drop in property prices across the estate. Therefore, unsurprisingly, reducing the value of the home loss payment and severance payment being offered by Flagship. All in all, for Abbey Farm Estate residents, is very bleak indeed. And the future is grim. Unfortunately, the people who originally proposed this regeneration did not consider the effect on sitting tenants and have overlooked the damage this would do to many people's lives, both mentally and physical health. And not to mention the 6 years long they have endured waiting to get to today's planning meeting. Thetford is a rural market town, not a dense urban sprawl. I ask why we need more properties on this estate that are totally out of character and with more noise, more traffic, more parking and more antisocial behaviour and less green space. I implore you all to consider what I've said and reject this misconception of a plan today and give back to residents their home life without the need for worry about the future, which a long construction period would cause. As a chair of Abbey Farm Action, I would like to see this complete planning application rejected today, and the flagship in the future to maintain the existing estate to a far better standard for their residents and tenants, thus giving Abbey Farm residents a better quality of life than they have today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to take Mike Westman, who's a ward representative, also on Breckland. 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, a glance at the screen. There you see really a deplorable sight. It gives you an indication of what life is like on the ground, as it were, for Abbey Farm residents. That photograph was taken on the 23rd of July. It's just behind a lay-by on Exeter Way. And I couldn't understand why it got like that until it was explained to me that the land is owned by Flagship. And they have owned it since 2008, but refused to acknowledge ownership until after a salvo of emails, telephone calls, texts, what have you. Finally, yes, they owned up and they said, we own the land. This is right next door to the Bishop's Primary Academy, by the way. So that was the 23rd of July. After ownership was acknowledged, next slide, please. Hey presto, it's cleaned up. So the point is, it's not rocket science. That's 2 hours work or something to clean it up. But what is life like? It's a paradise for fly tippers and purgatory for residents, is the point I'm making. Next slide, please. Walls are broken down, safety issues. These walls are broken down across the estate. The estate is a large place, and if you walk around, you will find many such incidents of them. Next slide, please. And then lastly, look at the overgrown weeds there. Again, it's nothing that's particularly hard to solve, but the look of the place, really what it needs is a really good cleanup. It needs coordination between the 4 organisations that are at play there. So you've got obviously Breckland Council, you've got Flagship, you've got Norfolk County Council, and you've got the Crown Estate. It needs one person in charge of all of that to implement a project, a rolling program with inspections, and you could get the place shining like a new pin inside 6 months. For the time being, I urge my colleagues on the stage to vote this application down. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. We now have Councillor Mike Brindle, also a ward representative on Breckland. 5 minutes, please, sir.
Thank you, Chairman, and thanks to the councillors who've come to Thetford for this meeting. Those councillors on the planning committee have just enjoyed a sales pitch from a housing association. I'm going to ask you to return to what human beings actually need. I had a walk round Abbey this morning, talking to people, more listening to people. They're all against the proposal, as you'd expect. 2 separately said, we're up in arms. As a ward councillor, in all the time since this proposal surfaced, I've only talked to one resident who was actually in favour, only one. But there is underneath a very stoical British anger. It is contained just. I feel the same myself. I feel a rant coming on, but I'm trying so hard to speak to you calmly. And yet, residents behind me are going to hear this afternoon whether their house is going to be knocked down, whether their home is going to be destroyed. That's part of the decision you have been asked to make. I don't know why people manage to keep so calm, but they do. It's wonderful. But they shouldn't if the decision goes wrong. I used to be a headmaster in Thetford, and one year we hosted the East of England Junior Chess Championships. We set up a room with 40 chess sets and 80 children and younger teenagers, and they sat facing each other in pairs. Each played 8 games, maybe half an hour each, a few minutes between games and a lunch break. Luckily, because of my experience in my particular trade as a headmaster, I knew that children needed far more than that. There was an essential addition to the chess programme, and that was to build in 20 or 30-minute gaps. The children could do what they'd like. They could analyse their games as adults would have done, stand around the board. But no, they rushed out for football, running around, physical activity, and would open up the school ground so they could throw a ball, kick a ball, run around, jump around, roll around, dance. The opposite of being cooped up in a 6th floor flat. Because that's what children need if they're not to become frustrated and caged. They need safe, green, open space, which the house cannot provide. Thankfully, the Abbey hasn't given them open space. It has given them safe, green, open space up till now. All my experience is we must give children open, safe space away from home and parents and teachers and chess masters. I keep emphasising safe space, and I also mean, therefore, away from cars. Of course, children are savvy and won't often get hit, but do we really want our children growing up looking over their shoulder all the time? Away from cars, but also away from earth, away from road tarmac. Did you used to play British Bulldogs, I wonder? It's not much fun tackling and play fighting and wrestling on a hard, unforgiving road surface. Anyway, the roads will be filled with parked cars as there are insufficient parking spaces in this proposal. I desperately hope we're not really saying children don't need safe green space, so let them play on the road. We are going to aim higher than that, aren't we, colleagues? So please reject this proposal which threatens our Breckland children. They are our greatest asset. Let's keep our green spaces and reject this proposal.
Members, can I just ask, are you happy to continue, or would anyone like a comfort break? Comfort break or continue? Please, someone put a hand up for comfort break. Yep, comfort break, comfort break. Okay, we're going to have a 10-minute comfort break because we've been at it just over 2 hours. Can I, just before you all move, can I assure you this is just Could you all please take your seats? We're about to resume. Thank you. Councillor Brindle, you escorted us to the lavatory, which was very kind of you, and we did not discuss anything, did we? Please say yes. Thank you. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, to resume the meeting, I'm calling upon members of the committee, if you have any questions that you need to ask the applicants or any of the objectors or the planning staff. Councillor Bowes, then Councillor Bambridge, and then Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I'd like to ask a question about the compulsory purchase aspect of the application, providing that can be... Sorry, I'd like to ask a question about the compulsory purchase aspect of the application, providing that can be asked here as opposed to under reserved matters. Okay? I've got more. Yes, so the reason I'd like to ask the question is that whilst I can see the application has plus points and would provide significant regeneration and improved amenity, having read the report and listened to the presentation, I have serious concerns about the compulsory purchase aspect of the scheme and the negative impact it may have, not least regarding owner-occupiers who would have bought their homes from the local authority or housing provider in full faith that home ownership meant complete control over the future of their property and not that the provider would be issuing them with a CPO further down the line. It's a very basic principle at the heart of our society that private ownership should mean just that, and that principle is what those Abbey Estate residents would have invested in when they first purchased their homes. I'm also very worried that a precedent could be set here which could lead this authority, or whatever body succeeds it, to exercise compulsory order powers against homeowners more freely in the future. So my question here is whether every possible avenue has been explored to achieve regeneration without having to resort to the compulsory purchase of private homes, because at this point, I'm not convinced of that. Thank you.
Councillors, to be very clear, the proposals in front of you are outline planning proposals. The demolition plan, as shown, is an illustrative proposal about one of the ways that the site could be brought forward. Compulsory purchase is not a material planning consideration that you can take into consideration in the determination of this planning application. The ways and means that the estate might be brought forward are not material to the planning consideration, only the aspects of the planning application that are on the screen in front of you. So the principle of having 500 additional housing on this estate and also the additional commercial proposals that are put in front of you. How that is achieved in terms of individual householders is not a subject for the planning application to be considered. There will obviously be means of delivering this, but you must stick to the material planning considerations. And with regards to whether there are alternative regeneration projects, members, as you well know, you need to consider the application in front of you. The plans that you've been shown today are one way in which the estate could be developed, not the way that the estate is going to be developed. They are illustrative only, and they are not the matters of detail to be considered today.
Sorry, point of order, Chairman, if I can raise a point of order. The member has asked a question. It has not been answered by the officer. Could I just get some advice from the solicitor as to whether that should be answered and whether it is actually relevant to the application?
Okay, that's fine, thank you. I think that's what's now taking place before your initial nudge.
Thank you for that. My colleague is absolutely correct that the compulsory purchase powers that exist are not a relevant planning consideration to this application. However, clearly identified in the report and expressed today by the case officer is a recognition of the anxiety, the mental aspect of this application, the stress, the uncertainty that is fully recognized as a result of the fact that there are a whole raft of strands that no one is the wiser of at this moment. And as with any material consideration, you are entitled as a committee to weigh up those material considerations. And if you feel at your complete discretion that there is overall compliance with the development plan, which is what the officer has said, but that's your decision. But you would be entitled, quite rightly, if that is what you feel, to say that the material planning considerations as regards all these uncertainties outweigh overall compliance, and you could vote for refusal.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Bambridge, please.
Thank you. Well, before I get to what I wanted to say, I will say thank you to Claire for bringing that up, because I had noted that it was very much an issue that came from the members of the public here today. I would like to thank you, officers, for an excellent presentation. I learned a lot from that, and it dealt with lots of the points that I'd got in front of me, and indeed for the multiple useful comments that came and some of the promises that were made as well. I'm left with 4 real comments, and they are comments, but I think they're relevant because all we are considering today, as you just pointed out, are the outline proposals. I wanted to make a comment that you said about parking, that we're working on county standards for the date of the outline planning application. I think that 1.55 houses, 1.55 parking spaces as a county standard is very low for a rural market town, and I think that's something that the applicant certainly should consider, and I would take serious note of how I voted if I'm still on this committee when the reserve matters come forward. My second thoughts were the protection of the chalk stream. We don't pay enough attention. I'm sorry to dodge about on this, folks. We don't look after our chalk streams well enough in Norfolk. Other parts of the country do a much better job. And this is an important chalk stream, and it has been neglected, I have to say, by the Environment Agency and others. And in doing this estate, I hope that you'll protect it. I must say, as my third point, I am quite appalled by the 20-year phasing. This estate took, I think, 4 to 5 years to build, and it's going to take 20 years to alter. I think that's something that I'd like to see you cut down, and especially when you come up with your reserve applications. And my last point I want to make just now is that it will definitely, I hope, come back to this committee for the reserved applications, as they no doubt will be.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman. I've got three questions, two of which are concerning me and one of which is really troubling me. I have been on the site visit with all the other members of the committee. I've read all the 143 pages of the main report and also the Regulation 18 and the local plan. And as members will know, I've been on the planning committee since 2015 and looked at everything objectively and carefully. And the points I'm going to make, I think, are relevant planning ones. This is a question to our planning officer, Rebecca Collins. I'll make the three and then you can come back to me. The first one is around crime. The report talks of recommendations to reduce crime and open up areas and improve lighting. No one can argue with that, but I haven't seen any statistics mentioned regarding this state or where current issues or where improvements can be made. That's my first area of concern. The second one, which I was amazed about, is around the NHS and the Section 106 contributions. I think this is the first time since I've been on the planning committee where the NHS sometimes doesn't comment. In this case, they've asked for a contribution, and that has then been, it says in the report, following further discussions, they've now reduced the request from 914,000 to 481,862 to cover primary care and the ambulance service. The ICS estates say that they would object to the proposed planning application as developer contributions can be secured to assist in delivering health infrastructure. In addition, I can't see any public health comment. As a fellow of the Royal Society of Public Health, I'm surprised that there doesn't seem to be a proper health equalities impact assessment. And even though there hasn't been a comment from the Director of Public Health, they may have a duty to be consulted and comment. So that's my second point. My most serious concern is, having looked at the application and actually been round the site, is the reduction in open space as opposed to formal play areas. Comment has been made in the officer's report around the quality of open space not being very good, underutilised, and monotonous lawns devoid of seating or lighting. As someone who's championed improvements in my own ward, I would say, well, what has stopped development and improvements already, and can we have confidence that this will take place in the future? Looking at the figures, we've heard a number of things bandied about. It seems to me, looking at this, that there'll be a reduction overall in the open space, and which I think can be better utilised. And I remain to be convinced, in terms of planning terms, that in terms of ENV04, it will actually be compliant fully with the spirit and the letter of ENV04, which is one of our planning criteria. And if I can't be satisfied for that, I can't be supporting the application. Thank you.
Okay, with regards to the questions asked, so you asked a question about lighting. There is illustrative material with the planning submission about lighting, but members will note there are in fact 2 planning conditions applied to the application in the event it was approved that deal with lighting across the estate, how that's to be delivered and how that's to be improved. So those matters have been conditioned because they're matters of detail which would be considered at reserved matters stage. And that is the correct way to deal with this type of application. With regards to the NHS contribution, you'll see that the report details at length the court cases, the relevant were asked for was specific enough to be a CIL contribution. And on that basis, the NHS didn't fail to provide that information, and therefore we cannot ask for that information because we cannot demonstrate it's necessary and reasonable in the CIL context to ask for a contribution in that regard. That is set out in the officer report. With regards to public health, they were consulted. They did not respond to the consultation. There were 2 rounds of consultation where they were consulted. They did not respond. As you'll note from the officer report, Norfolk County Council Public Health have made comments to the application, and indeed they have no objections to it. With regards to open space members, our policy is policy ENV04, which is clear, which requires a certain allocation of open space per population of dwelling. It has been set out to you that the illustrative master plan does show a reduction in overall open space and that there will be a reduction in accordance with that standard. However, policy ENV04 is really clear that there can be a reduction in open space whether there is a qualitative improvement of open space. And that is one of the principles of the applications. However, all that said, those are not matters for consideration at those stage, members, about how much loss of open space there will be, how much provision of open space there will be, and whether there will be a qualitative improvement are all reserved matters considerations when you consider layout, appearance and scale.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. If I've not got it wrong, when listening to speakers, even the MP basically said there was a need for regeneration. And I think my questions have been answered by the flagship team when they responded. But I'd like to know if they can still have correspondence and communication with residents, because it doesn't seem like there's been enough done in the consultations. You haven't answered I don't think you've listened to the residents, what I can hear, that you haven't answered their questions and allayed their fears and worries of what will happen with the development. I mean, can, for stage 1, for instance, be done at one side of the estate where commercial vehicles and builders' vehicles don't travel through the estate, disrupting the lives of the residents. I know the regeneration is very important, and like I said, I believe the residents agree to some sort of development. And the pictures on the slide you saw earlier, last, that was evidence that the Abbey does need regeneration. And we've got to think of our young people as well. As a named advocate for young people in Norfolk, I'm very concerned that it is the future of the Abbey for the young people and their children. I know you can do this. I did work with Flagship 10 years ago.
Councillor, could I just ask if there a question? Is there a question?
I did to confirm what they said about can they do a development on one side without travelling through the estate, disrupting residents? Can that stage 1 be done somewhere else?
It is an outline application at this stage, so
and
I'm not sure if we can get a full answer to that question.
Well, that was said it was going to be conditioned, so that could be thought of now, between now and possible any other application coming in.
Okay, thank you. Duly noted. Councillor Kyber, please. Could you pass the microphone along, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to ask the applicants whether they have considered in full policy TH37. This is headed Regeneration Proposals of Existing Residential Areas and is highly specific to this application. Item C in that asks for levels of children's play and open space.
Sorry, Chairman, can I ask Councillor Kyber to speak up because I can't hear him sat here.
Right, start again. Can I ask the applicants if policy TH37 has been considered in full, because item C of that policy concerns levels of children's play and open space, and the policy says they should be maintained or preferably enhanced. And there are the rest of TH37, which came in 2012 and has been a retained policy through 2 further local plans. It states, Breckland Council will positively support proposals to redevelop redundant parking courts on existing housing estates to provide for additional housing subject to meeting criteria. It also says proposals for redevelopment of dwelling stock that results in a net reduction in housing density will also be supported, where this also provides for an overall improvement in the housing mix and the site layout, particularly in the treatment of outdoor space. I don't see that this application addresses these policies.
Councillor, you're asking the members to you're asking the flagship to comment on the open space provision, and that is a reserved matter, not for consideration today, because it relates to matter of layout.
My question was whether they had considered in full the implications of the policy.
Mr. Hill, would you like to answer? Have we got a microphone here, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we are very well aware of TH37 and we have considered it. There is a detailed review of the policy in the planning statement. I would reiterate a number of the comments that have been made by the officer, though, that it is a matter that will be determined at the Reserve Matters application. However, what we have sought to do is, through the Illustrative Master Plan, demonstrate one way in which the policy could be addressed. And just pick up the points that has been made in relation to children's play areas, for example. The indicative plans show that how the number could be increased from 2 to 17. That's one opportunity on the site. So there would be a range of open space that would be provided, including what are classed as laps, leaps, neeps, sorry for the technicality, but as reiterating what your officer says, that is a matter that will be determined at the Reserve Matters stage.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hunter-Clark, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened very carefully to the proceedings today. I'm not from Thetford. I've come here with genuinely an open mind. But I do find it concerning that questions are not being answered by the officers. I think that's the first thing I would say. And I also find it concerning that it's clearly this application that's being asked of us to decide is clearly in contravention of our own policies. So I also find that staggering personally. But I do have a couple of questions, because that's what we're here to do, is to question and scrutinise the application. My first question is, we know any increase in population puts a strain on local services. So could you just talk us through, whether this is the applicants or the officers, what the plan mitigation is? You know, are there any proposed new schools, for example, GP services, etc.? And the second question I'd like to raise, it's been touched on, but I think it's very important, is clearly if this goes ahead, you know, people will become homeless. What is the plan? There's nothing in these documents to suggest where people should go. That's all I have to say, but thank you for allowing me to speak.
So, as you're aware, the officer report sets out the Section 106 contributions. All the statutory consultees have been consulted in relation to services and the need for services, and they have responded with the appropriate contributions that are required to meet those services with regard to those that we can offer and contribute to in terms of the planning system. So as you'll note, the Education Authority has asked for contributions. The applicant has offered to pay those contributions in full. So the services and facilities and the impact on those has been assessed throughout the officer report, and relevant contributions have been sought. With regards to the homelessness issue, Mr. Horn has already set out at the beginning that these matters have been taken into consideration with regards to the Equalities Act and the impact that this will have on local residents. This is one of the material planning considerations in the determination of the planning application, and those matters will be dealt with as each reserve matters application comes forward. And at the minute, you're not considering which houses are being demolished or which residents are needing to be moved, because that isn't a material consideration at this time. What your starting point is members, your starting point must always be the development plan and the policies that lie within that development plan. And as Mr. Horn's already set out, what you must first assess is whether there is overall compliance with the development plan as a whole. And as you see in the officer report, it is officer's opinion that there is overall compliance with the development plan as a whole. And then you can look at other material considerations, of which the impact on local people is one of those other material considerations. What you cannot do at this stage is take into account matters that will be reserve matters. And therefore you cannot consider the individual properties in... Oh, I thought you said no. Oh, I thought you said no to me, sorry. The details of the individual phases and the construction works within those individual phases are not matters for consideration at this time, members.
Well, the solicitor, sorry, on a point of order, Chairman, the solicitor said the opposite earlier when he said that if there were uncertainties, that should be taken into account. I'm pretty sure I heard that, but...
No, with the greatest respect, I didn't, but I will absolutely clarify if I have not been as clear as I should have been. This is an outline application. It is absolutely clear that everything apart from access is a reserved matter. So, when you ask why officers have not answered questions on certain matters that have been put to us, the answer is because it is not, or they are not, relevant to this application. They will be when they come back and they are considered in full applications or application. That is a matter of law. You then ask why and excuse me if I'm putting words into your mouth, but I took the question as follows. Along the lines of why are officers recommending approval when, in your opinion, there are a number of policies that are non-compliant? And my point on that is that is your prerogative to decide whether you agree with the officers as to compliance with the development plan as a whole. That is your officer's recommendation, but you are here to vote and make it a determination as to whether you believe that officers are correct. And if you don't believe that they or we are, then it is your prerogative to vote accordingly.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from members? Any further questions? No. Oh, Councillor Wickerton, please.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps the planning officers could give me an explanation of a statement which I don't understand, which is not unusual for me. However, on page 18, under the heading, the air quality assessment is deemed insufficient for the scale of the development. And the officer comment underneath says, the council's air quality officer has not objected to the application. Can you just explain exactly what that means? Because we have heard from certain residents today about the demolition process, which is going to create dust, it's going to create havoc, it's going to have a major impact on the quality of the air, I would think. So if you could explain exactly what that means, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
The current air quality assessment is, what was the phrase you used, is insufficient. But what they have recommended is that matter can be dealt with via conditions. So as you well know, members, whereby matters of concern can be adequately dealt with by Planning Commission as set out in planning legislation, then it should be done so in that way. So if you then look through your list of conditions, there is a condition to deal with air quality, and also there is a NOx contribution to deal with construction air quality during construction traffic. So as we don't know the details of the application yet, we don't know the details of which areas are going to be demolished and which areas aren't, then that matter cannot be fully carried out at outline stage. It will need to be carried out with each reserve matters application as per the conditions.
I think I've got Councillor Cogman, please.
Thank you. Thanks to the solicitor as well for clarifying that point, because that is one of the questions I was going to ask. So I understand that. So there's a lot of uncertainty and ambiguity because of then the reserved matters and conditions in the future that may or may not be agreed. So there's the future perceived benefits, but not how it will, well, we talked about how it will impact the lives of existing residents. So I think my question around is what I'm hearing is part of the problem here is like the experience that the residents have had with flagships, and so the trust in the process. So I don't know if I'm allowed to be asking that, but that's what, if it, you know, perhaps in a different situation, there might be, okay, we understand that that's got to be sorted out then, and then after that, this has happened. But what I'm hearing is that there's been, you know, why has it taken this long, so for, you know, since 2006 to suggest these improvements, and why can't have improvements been made and the houses, you know, kept up to standards and such like. So I think around the trust element, if we can comment on any of that.
Again, Kendra, you can only consider the application that's in front of you. Sorry, I should have said Councillor Cogman, apologies. But you can only consider the application in front of you. I get that those matters that residents don't feel that they've been able to have those conversations or been listened to with flagship are concerning to them, and I get their motive. But in terms of the planning application, there has been 2 significant public consultations carried out during the lifetime of this application. Anyone who's wanted to comment on that application has been able to. Their comments are summarised in the officer report, and they have been taken into account in reaching a conclusion on the application. I get that people want to have further detailed conversations with flagship. I get that there are issues around their surrounding homes that they feel that should have been dealt with in a different way. But unfortunately, they aren't matters for the planning application that's in front of you. You can only consider the outline planning application in front of you, not the private tenancy agreements with that company.
Thank you, Mr. Horn.
As a supplement to the answer given, I would draw your attention to an answer I've previously given, that it is absolutely your prerogative to conclude that the material planning considerations of anxiety, stress, uncertainty all outweigh if you judge that there is compliance overall with the development plan you are entitled to, you're not entitled, you have to do a weighing up exercise and conclude whether or not, in your opinion, the material planning considerations, which include matters such as this, anxiety, stress, outweigh all other compliance with the development plan overall.
I've got a last speaker, and that's Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you, Chairman. A question for our solicitor, if I may. The speakers, the objectors, and indeed Terry Jemmy MP raised concerns, as have the Town Council, in respect of human rights with the loss of amenity. I appreciate fully that the officers that have gave the presentation today are giving that presentation on compliance with the legal requirements in regards of planning terms. But my question would be, if we were to pass the application, would there be a risk to the council in terms of a potential breach of the Article 8 of the Human Rights Act? Could there be a repercussion?
There's always a risk on any application that comes before this council. There is always a risk on any decision that this council makes that the matter could go to judicial review. We always have to comply with human rights legislation. So the answer is unequivocally yes, but this particular case is no different to any other decision that this council makes, whether it's through its committees, at full council, or delegated.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're coming to a decision on this now, and this is for Thetford, application 3PL 2024-0394. This is an outline format as set out in the... As set out in the agenda. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands, please? And those against the... Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Could I have your reasons from the floor for your for this application to be refused? Thank you. Sorry, we just need quiet, please. Councillor Clark.
Yes, I wait for other colleagues to come in. The committee do not feel that the relevant sections of policy ENVO for open space, sport and recreation have been fully addressed, and we don't think that we think that the harm of this application will outweigh any good. There may be other aspects that other members may want to mention. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kyber, would you like to second that with your input?
For my personal reasons are that the application fails to demonstrate that the housing numbers can be delivered in accordance with policy TH37.
Okay. So from the floor, which has been seconded as well, your recommendation.
Point of order, Chairman. It's also the officers who should be assisting the committee based on the discussions that we've had, coming up with reasons as to why we object to the proposal. So I'd ask the officers if they could also contribute to this discussion. Thank you.
Just one sec.
I would be delighted to. I normally do, and this is no different. My view is that the two reasons that have been put forward are quite simply not justifiable on the facts. And I have to advise you that they would be extremely difficult to defend at a public inquiry. However, having listened to the room and taken the sense of the questions that have been directed to me, what I'm feeling, and I absolutely am not going to put words in your mouth, so please tell me whether I am hearing this correctly, is that there is a feeling that overall, whilst there is overall compliance with the development plan, members feel that material planning considerations of all the uncertainty and the stress that these unanswered questions pose outweigh overall compliance with the development plan. Is that a fair summation? I do not wish to put words in anybody's mouth.
Councillor Wickerson.
Thank you to our corporate solicitor. May I just remind you of your own words earlier on this evening when questioning the concept of compulsory purchase, and I wrote it down when you said it, this could be a reason for refusal.
Yes, but I related that to exactly what I've just said. So what I've just said are, I've included the word uncertainties. That includes compulsory purchase of houses that obviously people know nothing about, and the stress and the uncertainty that causes. Those are material planning considerations, and that is why I have phrased my answer as I have done. In other words, what you've just said is
Thank you. As soon as Councillor Clark started speaking and given his reasons, as a member that voted against the officer's recommendation, I instantly started shaking my head down the table, because that is not a reason that I would support not to take that recommendation. The reasons that I would give are the reasons that the solicitor has just given, that the implications of this application on the residents would outweigh what I believe would be those material considerations in themselves.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Are you putting that forward as a suggestion? Is that seconded as a reason for refusal?
I'm happy to second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so once again, to finalise this, the recommendation from the floor, which has been seconded as well, is that this item is refused. Could I have a show of hands for refusal, please? For the reasons that have been given. Okay, thank you. Okay, and those against that? Okay, 3. Same again. Thank you. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I now announce that this particular planning application for 3PL 2024-0394 in outline format has been refused. Could I just end? I know we've gone on a little bit too long, but could I just thank you all for your attendance? And I'd also like to thank all the ladies and gentlemen of the public, not necessarily thank our councillors because they're used to it, and our MP even more so. But it's a very difficult situation for you to put yourself in, and I thank you very much for your input. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.